Let's hold this meeting, joint meeting of the Mountain View Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the Los Altos Complete Streets Commission to order. And can we start with the roll call, starting with Mountain View? Great. Brandon, do you do that?
Yes, I do. Chair Kuzma.
Present.
Vice Chair Stone.
Present.
Member Barton.
Present.
Member Adamick.
Here.
Member Fenwick.
Present.
All members are present and accounted for.
Great. And can the Los Altos Commission do their roll call? However you do that.
Sure can. Commissioner Oyang. Present. Commissioner Ambler. Present. Commissioner Van, or
Here.
Vice Chair Van Castro. Commissioner Katz.
Here.
Commissioner Snyder.
Here.
And Commissioner Maloof.
Here.
So, and myself, Commissioner Banerjee, the chair present. So we have all 7 members present today in person.
Thank you. That moves us past the roll call. Before we move on to oral communications from the public, it is my understanding that we would like to swap the order of items 4.1 and 4.2 in the agenda because Mountain View has sent out public notice about that item earlier that said it would happen at or later than 6:30. Or for item 4.1, so we'd like to move it to after item 4.2 so we can adhere to that commitment. If there are no objections, we will swap the order. If there are objections, we can sort that out. Are there any objections to swapping that?
I don't see any objections here from Los Altos.
Great, and I do not see any here. So then we will take for item 4, we will take item 4.2 first and then item 4.1. All right, great. Moving on to item 3, oral communications from the public. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. State law prohibits the committee from acting on non-agenda items. Any members of the public in the general public comment section?
See no hands in the room and I see no hands online. And I just want to make clear if anyone does have a question or would like to be involved in the meeting, please raise your hand or press *9 if you're on the phone, and we will address you and give you 3 minutes to speak. And I see no hands online or in the room.
May I interrupt a second? I'm hearing from someone that they're not able to get into the meeting. It's our council liaison. So if we could just check the logistics a moment.
Oh, who is this person?
It's our council liaison. One of our council members is unable to connect with the meeting.
Mr. Flagor.
Marissa,
Ethan
maybe-
Plagar. So I have that person just logged on here just a minute ago, and I will promote them to panelist.
Okay, so what I think they're saying is they are getting in on the Mountain View link, but maybe not on our link. So
Link should have been the same. Maybe she's using the old email. There was an updated email that went out, I think, with a different link.
Doesn't matter. Mountain View is fine.
Okay. It sounds like she's been able to join the meeting.
Here.
She's on as an attendee, and I'm attempting to promote her to panelist, and she has just accepted the promotion.
Okay, great. And I assume, are there any in-person public commenters in Los Altos?
we don't have any in-person public comments this evening.
Great, then we will close item 3. We will now move to item 4, new business, and we will move to item 4.2 first. This is the Safe Routes to School program update. I believe we have a presentation from Prioti.
Yeah, actually it's from, I'll be presenting.
Okay.
Find the right one. And hello, here, let me just facing the screen. Hi, I'm Ria Hooch-Barrett-Lowe. I'm the transportation manager for the City of Mountain View. We also have with us Kristen Harkum, who is our consultant project manager from Alta Planning and Design. And also online we have Prioti Ahmed, who is the project manager for the Safe Routes to School program in Mountain View. And we have Marissa Lee, who is going to be presenting from the Los Altos side. And let me share my screen. Okay, great. So Safe Routes to School is a program that helps to build a culture of health, safety, and sustainability in relation to school access. Safe Routes to School is a council, community, and staff priority for both Los Altos and Mountain View. And in Mountain View, we're just winding up our 3-year contract with Alta. And so it's time for us to report back, specifically on the last year, which has been the most intense after COVID. And then given also the overlapping city and school district boundaries, we thought it was beneficial for us to kind of also invite Los Altos to provide an overview of what's happening in Los Altos in terms of Safe Routes to School, and to see if we can find some opportunities for collaboration. So in both cities, the program is multi-pronged. It includes education, safety trainings, encouragement, events, evaluation like the bike counts, engineering, things like the walk audits and design improvements, and also some enforcement. Cities like Mountain View and Los Altos have seen significant benefits of a Safe Routes to School program, and some of those benefits are improved safety for students, which is the most important thing, reduced congestion and emissions, particularly around schools, increased student focus, physical activity, and academic performance as a result of them, kind of getting to school on their own steam, and also increased functional independence of students and inclusion. So there are a lot of benefits to these kind of programs. We've provided several updates over the last, as the program has really kind of evolved a lot in Mountain View in the last couple of years. And so we're reporting out with a focus on this year's activities. About 18 months ago, Prioti started with the city, and she has really been instrumental. And in fact, I'd just like to mention that Prioti got a Discover Award, which is like an award that goes to outstanding staff members in the city. So she's been very instrumental in really helping the program to flourish in Mountain View and creating partnerships with the school districts and school communities. She's established relationships which we didn't have before with the school resource officers from the police department. She's strengthened the relationships with the school districts and the schools. She set up a coordinating committee for Safe Routes to School. And so this has like parents who, it's mostly parents, there's also principals, the superintendent comes sometimes. We have the school and also the police school resource officers attend as well. So it's a really good forum for a lot of kind of exchange of ideas and updates. And then also the other thing that Prioti has done has been to provide input on the Crossing Guard program, which is a program which has been run through our police department, and it's dramatically expanded in the last couple of years from 9 crossing guards that we had a couple of years ago to 15 that we have now. And we have like a request for 6 more with the current CIP, the capital improvement program and budget updates. And also the other thing that she works on is project managing our consultant and the work that the consultants do. And so we've also participated in all the events that the consultants have been working on as well. So in terms of, so that's what we're doing from a city perspective. And this is quite a new thing for Mountain View, because previously we didn't have the staff to kind of be involved in the program. So it was really a very hands-off program previously. In terms of the consultant-led activities, there's been a lot of activities in the last year, a lot of educational activities, such as the hands-on safety training, which was conducted for 15 schools, right? Or 12 schools. Was that 12 or 15?
It was 12 schools.
12 schools and about 3,500 students in the last year. So they all got their safety training. They got to think about the routes to school, got a fitting for the helmets, training on, how to cross the street correctly, and also how to keep their bike safe and ride safely. We also had 4 bike rodeos with another one coming. So there were 2 citywide rodeos with about 40 bicyclists altogether and a lot of pedestrians. We also had one at the Sahara Mobile Home Park, and we had one at Green Middle School, and we're going to be having one at Credendon Middle School. We also had 15 hip hop assemblies, which were a hit. They were really popular with the students. About 4,000 students participated in these at 15 schools, all the way from kindergarten to 8th grade. And then in the spring, we've also done walking audits at all of the schools, all 15 schools. We had about 40 parents participate in this and really provide very valuable feedback on some of the pain points that they experience as their students are getting to school, and also just kind of being able to look at the travel patterns as people arrive at school and kind of, you know, unloading kids, or how all of that happens. And so this has helped us to better understand, you know, what's going on around schools. It's also helped to feed into some initial infrastructure projects, including the Miramonte Complete Streets project and the crossing improvements at 10 locations, which is going to be discussed tomorrow. So if you want to come back tomorrow, there'll be some interesting things there. And also there's been some coordination on, you know, crossing El Camino, which is something that both Los Altos and Mountain View are kind of working on with Caltrans. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Marissa in terms of some of the activities on the Los Altos side.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marissa. I am the transportation manager for the city of Los Altos. And the city of Los Altos has worked really hard in the last about 2 or 3 years with Alta, our Safe Routes to School consultant, to get our Los Altos Safe Routes to School program going as well. So I'm going to kind of quickly run through some of the things we've been working on. Los Altos Complete Streets Commission, I know you've heard a lot of this. There'll be hopefully a couple of surprises in here for you, so see if you can find them. So to start out with, we have established a Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee, and that consists of administrators and principals from the various different schools and districts in Los Altos. There are also parents on the advisory committee, members of the Greentown Los Altos team, and members of the Complete Streets Commission as well. We've done a large bike month planning effort this year, the biggest one I think that we've done in a few years. So we have a few different activities, family bike day, bike to work and wherever days, a downtown bike and dine that we're putting on or helping the foundation downtown to put on. And then a school challenge called Bike to the Moon, where students log their miles and try to get as many miles collectively as the distance to the moon. And that committee consists of some of the same members of the advisory committee, plus a few. So the additional ones are the Parks and Rec Department of the City of Los Altos, and the Safe Routes to Downtown Los Altos group, and the Alto Velo Racing Club and the Bicycle Outfitter. Next slide, please. Another project that we've worked on extensively over the last few years is our suggested routes to school maps and our infrastructure improvement plans. So those were done as part of the Complete Streets Master Plan process, and they received a lot of feedback from both residents and commissioners. And so we established those. The routes to school are obviously kind of our suggested routes, where we try to encourage students to walk to school and bike to school on those routes. And then the infrastructure plans are kind of near to midterm improvement plans for infrastructure around school zones. Next slide. We've also helped to commission the very first Safe Routes to School mobile app. So it's called schoolroutes.org. The purpose is to connect students for walking and biking groups and to encourage walking and biking and active transportation, both to school, but students can also log other trips around town, to provide rewards as part of a rewards program, and also to provide a platform for messaging so parents can communicate with each other to set up carpools, walking and biking groups, and then also the school can send out updates to parents via kind of like a text blast or a notification type of system. And those were pulled straight from the suggested routes maps that I referenced in the last slide. We did a yard sign campaign that was very successful. We originally printed 500 yard signs, and they were all distributed almost immediately. They got a lot of great feedback. The residents were requesting more, so we got another 500 printed. We've distributed about 300 of those additional ones. We still have a couple hundred that we'll bring to various upcoming events. They say we slow down for each other, and they're all over town and holding up well. You've probably seen some of them. Next slide. We put together a toolkit. So this is a active transportation champion toolkit. So it's designed for parents or caregivers or educators or community members who want to become kind of an active transportation champion in the community and organize walking and biking events at school. And it includes a really cool kind of how-to guide with ideas and kind of suggestions and templates for walking and biking encouragement activities. Next slide. We also came up with the idea kind of midway through our kind of Safe Routes to School program. We were helping one particular school who was having some, particular congestion and commute time difficulties, and we put together a messaging kind of campaign for them. And then we thought, why don't we expand this out and kind of make it into a ubiquitous toolkit that all the schools can use. And it contains, monthly or seasonal messages that contain tips for walking and biking safety for different times of year, current events, tips for Halloween, tips for daylight savings time when the light changes, and then summer and winter tips, how to bike safely in the winter. And so we've distributed that for all the schools to use as a way to communicate with their parents and students and people who are kind of dropping kids off at school. And also a lot of information in there on driver behavior guidelines, because we've had a lot of complaints about that. Next slide. So this is kind of what I was just referencing. One of our schools had particular trouble with kind of congestion and driver behavior in the morning and afternoon commutes. So we put together some special support for them. We, Andreon, our Safe Routes to School consultant, and I put together a video message to parents and students to talk about driver behavior and drop-off procedure and commute recommendations. We also installed a drop-off zone at the back of the school, and we produced and distributed maps and commute guidelines and other educational info. So you can see on the screen the map that was produced, and that was us presenting guidelines for drop off and pickup. We have recently been engaging with the local newspaper, the Los Altos Town Crier, and we have been kind of in communication with them and bringing, they were originally kind of coming to us about certain article ideas, and then we kind of went to them with a couple of article ideas saying, hey, we have this, for example, new cycle track on Almond Avenue, and we're noticing some driver confusion with how to use it. All the bikes seem like they know how to use it pretty well, but it's the drivers that are struggling. Could you run this article for us on how to use the cycle track? And Andreon and I actually wrote the article, sent it to them. They published it pretty much as is. And we have coordinated with them on a few other things as well that are listed on the side. The school route signage and signing project, the Bike Month events promotion, and also we're planning to coordinate with them on the schoolroutes.org app promotion of advertising. Andreon, our consultant, developed a comprehensive bicycle and pedestrian safety curriculum. It piloted early this year, and it's scheduled to be delivered in classrooms by PE teachers at 8 different schools. It'll be assembly format. It involves some kind of tools, as you can see in the photo, some bikes and some stop signs and some crosswalks. So students get to learn about bike and ped safety, and then they get to practice it in the assembly. And we are also working on evaluation metrics for that, including the number of schools participating and the number of students reached, and completion of the toolkit to educate in class curriculum for educators. Another idea that came about recently, kind of midway through our Safe Routes to School program, was the bike light giveaways. We received complaints that students were riding without lights. We've so far had 3 events in middle schools and high schools in Los Altos where we've given away these bike lights that we've produced. So we created a logo that says "I Bike Los Altos," and we got it printed on lights. They come in a package of 2. So there's a red light and a white light. So one for the front of the bike and one for the back. You can change the batteries, and then they have little watch batteries. And we passed them out. Students were really excited about them. We got a ton of participation, a ton of engagement, a lot of visitors to our table. And while we were there, we also collected student feedback on their walking and biking routes. So that's what you can see in the image. Is we printed out the suggested route map for that school, brought some Post-its and some pens. We also brought some snacks. People were excited about that. And got people's feedback on their route and where they saw some issues. So that was really a fun event too. And we have some more events planned to reach some of the schools in Southern Los Altos next. We've done a lot of infrastructure improvements along school routes. So infrastructure is a big component of our Safe Routes to School program. A couple of years ago in 2020, we implemented Los Altos' first two-way cycle track. It's along the front of Los Altos High. And we are planning to give it some updates this summer to bring it up to NACTO standards. We also installed, so that's the top photo on the slide. And then we also installed a walking and biking path adjacent to Los Altos High and Almond Elementary. So that goes up and down El Monte. And it's kind of a cool design solution in an area where we didn't see it feasible to construct a sidewalk, but wanted to create a dedicated space for students walking to school. So we created this kind of thermoplastic material that designates the walking path and then a buffered bike lane adjacent to that. We also did some crossing improvements at the same time. And we also have under construction right now a big citywide Safe Routes to School signage and striping project. And that has improvements all over the city at locations adjacent to every school in the city, every public school. And then some more infrastructure things. We've kind of made a citywide effort and dedication to prioritize infrastructure improvements along school routes. So that's kind of our way of prioritizing, when we get requests for improvements or improvements that we're thinking about on the city side. We have also recently started using painted curb extensions in school zones. So that's what you can see in the image there. The brown terracotta color is a painted curb extension near Los Altos High, and that's been really helpful in designating a little bit more pedestrian space on those corners where we get high volumes of students, and also creating a more channelized zone for vehicles. Before that, we had vehicles kind of cutting the corner and creating a turn lane where there wasn't one, and that was creating more chaos than we wanted. So this was our design solution. We're also doing an RRFB rectangular rapid flashing beacon rehab project. That's the lighted flashing crosswalks. So that's citywide. That'll be under construction soon. And then we're planning some new RFBs along school routes as part of our next Safe Routes to School infrastructure improvement phase project. We also have the implementation of Los Altos' first bike boulevard, which is in South Los Altos, adjacent to Montclair Elementary. That's under construction right now. And a sidewalk gap closure project in the same area near Montclair.
Fantastic. Okay, so in terms of evaluation, both cities are receiving funds from the BTA's 2016 Measure B program. And so we're required to evaluate and report as part of that program, and also just for the benefit of the program and kind of learning from it in the future. So for Mountain View, the student tallies were sent to all of the schools. We got responses from all the schools except Mountain View High School, which I guess they were having some staffing changes at the time. So they'll respond next time. The teachers helped to conduct the tallies, and overall the tallies indicated that we have a 35% walking and biking mode share and an 8% carpool mode share, and then the rest 56% are, using their family cars to get to school. So the tallies were broken down by school, and the schools with the highest non-motorized and also carpool mode share were Castro Elementary School, Los Altos High School, and Vargas Elementary School. We also distributed parent surveys, and we got a really great response rate for that, over 1,000 responses from parents, which provided really valuable feedback on the program, including travel patterns and concerns. And this was just kind of divided up based on distance from school. I think from the walking audits, we realized that it's not just about distance, it's also about some of the other features like barriers, like roadways near schools as well. Some of the key concerns include concerns about intersections, traffic volume, and speed in these areas. And there was also surveys on the Los Altos side.
So we took some surveys as well, independently from Mountain View, because at the time we were not yet coordinating. And we did these in October of 2021. We did surveys, student hand tallies at 7 elementary and middle schools. And so this was where we sent the hand tallies to the school. We asked them to do the hand tallies for us, and we provided a incentive to the teachers who did one. We gave them gift cards to Target to buy school supplies in exchange for doing these hand tallies for us. And as you can see from the results, this was the chart that shows all of the Los Altos schools together. So most people are driving in their family vehicle in both the morning and the afternoon. And then, kind of similar numbers of people are walking or biking. And then very few people carpooling or taking the school bus. We also did a parent caregiver survey. So that was an online survey in the fall of 2021. We got 126 responses. And we wanted to understand concerns and motives for caregivers to consider walking or biking. And so people had a number of options to choose from as far as response. Most people said that they do walk and bike to school and it's easy for them. A lot of people said they do sometimes, but it's difficult, or that they don't and they don't want to start. And then a few people said they were thinking about it, or that they did plan to start. And then as far as concerns regarding their students' ability to walk or bike to school, most people referenced poor driving behavior on streets near school. So that was something that we tried to really target in our messaging campaign that I mentioned earlier. Bad weather was the next cited reason. After that, it was that driving is more convenient, or that walking or biking takes too long. And lack of facilities for bike parking was another one. Concerns about personal safety and a crossing guard concern were some other reasons. We asked people what safe routes to school services they were interested in. We use this to kind of really inform and guide our safe routes to school program. So people are interested in the bike safety education and walk and bike to school days. So that's really what we focused on in terms of the curriculum and our bike month planning. And then people were interested in walking school buses as well.
Great. So both cities have students that cross city borders in order to go to school. And so we've identified some opportunities for coordination, including the timing and the methodology of our surveys, and making sure that students are not taking 2 different surveys, particularly like Los Altos High School, for example, where there are 2 programs that affect the school. Also some ensuring consistency in the maps between the 2 cities, and coordinated events, messaging, and evaluation metrics. And there's also opportunities to learn from each other. I think Marissa was going to talk about this one.
Yeah. So I thought that it might be interesting to kind of see visually the different programs that we have, both cities have been working on, and then also to kind of get a visual on, which city had success. I think that Los Altos has had success in some areas, and Mountain View has had success in some areas, and those areas are in some cases overlapping and in other cases kind of opposite. And so I thought this might be a good way to kind of visualize where we can learn from each other. I know we in Los Altos get a lot of requests for more crossing guards, and even though I found out recently that we do actually have more crossing guards than any other city in the area, which was news to me. I know that Mountain View has done a really great job of expanding their crossing guard program. So they had 9 previously, and now they have 21 expanded in 2 years. We currently have 26 apparently. So maybe we could expand too, based on Mountain View's experience. We could learn from them. And then we've kind of taken a lead in driver compliance behavior messaging. That's something that Mountain View hasn't done yet. So, kind of down the list, you can see there are areas that we can learn from each other.
Great. And then finally, next steps, we're currently setting up our contract for the next 3 years. And we still have 1 bike rodeo to go. And then Los Altos is continuing to deliver their curriculum. And collaborating with schools. And so we have like a couple of questions. Do you support the overall coordination between the programs? And are there approaches that you wish for us to consider?
All right, so that's the presentation.
Yes.
Thank you. We will now go to the committee clarifying questions. So for anyone who hasn't dealt with Mountain View meetings before, the way we will do this is we will go around the committees, ask the committee members to ask any sort of specific questions about the material that we may have. The goal here is to not do any discussion or comments on the things, but ask things like, I didn't understand this thing on this slide, or to expand on this particular thing or whatever. We will then go to public comment on this item, and then we will return to the committees to address the discussion questions posted on this slide and to provide any other discussion relevant to this item. I think it is appropriate to start with the Mountain View committee for the questions, since we are used to dealing with this.
And I also just make one note. So for those who came in late, we switched the order of the first two items because the meeting started earlier than what the postcards say. So if you're here for the El Monte project, we're getting to that next after this.
Yes, I will provide additional clarification on that once we get to public comments as well. Who on the Mountain View committee would like to begin? Valerie. Sure, Member Fenwick.
Valerie here, and I just have a question for both cities. I did see school bus listed, at least on the Los Altos side, as a mode of transportation that it looked like nobody was using. So my question was, are school buses available for students to take, and what is the cost, and what are the criteria? Like that to be so close or so far? I was just curious about that. I don't see a lot of buses.
So currently in the Mountain View Wisman School District, there is a school bus that will take people from, like it depends, there's a formula based on distance and also whether the student has an IEP, which is something if you have some sort of special needs. So the students from Moffat Field, they get bused to Montaloma. And then the other school buses, seems to be that the other school buses are all related to IEPs. Is that your understanding, Priority?
Yeah, that's right.
And then, but there is, I heard just the other day that there's a conversation going on in the school district about school buses. And I don't know what the conversation is, but it sounds intriguing.
And on the Los Altos side?
I do know that Los Altos High has school buses. I do not know the criteria for which to ride.
Thank you.
It's
My only question.
Right. Member Dominic.
Yes, I was wondering with the messaging
We have special needs buses for their interest.
that goes out to students, does any of it occur before school starts? Like between when they register to start at a new school and when they actually start attending?
Priority, do you know the answer to that one?
Yeah, is this regarding the messaging that
Yes.
for safe works? So for last year, that was the first year we were kind of revamping it. We scheduled all the safety training right when the school started. So it wasn't a community-wide messaging, but that's what we kind of pushed out, that all August and September we did safety training for all the elementary and middle schools.
Not before they started school.
Okay.
Hello.
I was also curious about Los Altos, but
You repeat the question, please.
was any of the messaging between when students enrolled but before they started attending the school? So they registered, but they didn't start attending yet.
The messaging, like the parent messaging.
Yeah.
Behavior messaging, is that what you mean?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's a good question. I know we did a lot of messaging at the very beginning of the school year, but I'm not aware of any that happened in between the enrollment and school starting phase.
And then I just had a question for Ria, just because I'm curious. What is entailed in functional independence and inclusion in this?
So functional independence is, there's actually been studies about students getting to school and their spatial awareness, their understanding of the city, their experience of what is their home base, and being able to get to school on your own is beneficial for all of those things, especially walking and biking. And then inclusion, that, you know, this is a very cheap form of transportation, and so, you know, it's beneficial for people of all different socioeconomic groups.
So I have a question, I guess it's for the Los Altos side. On the painted curb extensions, are they stopping at paint, or are they incomplete as is, or are there going to be other impediments to cutting the corners? And the second question, I think those are only on the south end of the streets parallel to the high school on Almond. They were not done on the Jarden end, on the north end of those streets. Are they done yet, or will they be coming to the Jarden side, or was there a reason they weren't done on the Jarden side?
So to answer your second question, you are correct. They are along Almond, on the north side of Almond. So where those streets that continue to the north dead end into Almond. And we didn't do any improvements along Hardin as part of the scope of the recent signage and striping projects. We didn't do anything there, but we are looking at that area. We installed a loading zone on that kind of south curb of Hardin along the back of the school. And we are on pause there until we applied for a grant fund to potentially kind of, delineate a protected bikeway and do some other improvements and a loading zone. We didn't get the grant funding, so we have it as an add alt to the ongoing construction project. So if we have funding available at the end, we will do it then. And your first question was about vertical elements. So we installed, in addition to the thermo, we installed some kind of box dots, those little low dots that kind of create a rumbling if you go over them. We're gonna watch and see how they do. And we can always consider adding more vertical elements later, but we didn't want to do it in the first round just for the sake of not creating too much change at once for the neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Stone, right, then I will ask a couple of questions. First, Ria, I believe you mentioned something about the CIP when referencing crossing guard expansions. Was that a reference to the budget process in general, or does the capital improvements program cover crossing
Sorry,
guards?
I made an error. It was the operating budget.
Okay, thank you. I was somewhat confused with that.
Yeah.
Let's see. So you mentioned that the current 3-year contract for Mountain View Safe Routes to School thing is ending now. And then we're working on the next one. Is all the funding still staple bill, or?
Yes.
Okay, so that's just a result of the way the contract is done. I was wondering if anyone had on hand the statistics for what percentage of Los Altos and Mountain View High School students are from Mountain View and Los Altos respectively, just to give us an idea of how much intermixing there is.
I don't have that information. I'm not sure.
If no one has it on hand, that's
Yeah.
fine. But,
No, I don't either.
okay, thank you. I was curious about since the picture was shown of the a sort of pseudo sidewalk striped onto El Monte within Los Altos. I was curious how many issues this town had with people parking in that, since I know going through El Monte on the weekends, I've seen people parked more on the other side of the street in that bike lane. But I never go through there on the weekdays. So I'm curious what your experience has been with that sidewalk and with that road as a whole.
I pass through that area occasionally. I sometimes see someone kind of parked and waiting in their car on top of the walkway outside of Almond Elementary. It looks like they're waiting for a student to get picked up. I never see any issues any farther north than that first block where it's all residential. I don't ever see anyone parked on this walkway there.
And then I had one more open-ended question about how we approach PD enforcement of things like that blocking of the bike lanes, or as was raised in a public comment, which I will read in a bit more details than I might otherwise, where a member of the public in Mount View was mentioning cars turning right onto El Camino from Castro and rolling sort of up into the crosswalk when they do the turn, and then that's affecting. And then they mentioned that they had spoken to the crossing guard, and the crossing guard had noticed issues with that crosswalk. How does the city approach those circumstances?
So I don't know specifically about that issue.
Sure.
But we are a little short-staffed in terms of traffic enforcement. And so the traffic I think that we have 3 total for, the 24-hour shift throughout the city. And I think that what has been actually very effective in terms of enforcement with Safe Routes to School has been, there's three schools, and I can't remember which ones they are, where the principals get involved. And if somebody lets them know that, okay, so-and-so's parent did a 6-point turn in the middle of this spot where all the kids are coming in, they get a phone call from the principal, and that has turned out to be very effective. So I know Mountain View High School has some sort of approach like that, where the principal kind of, contacts people. I think it was Therakalf, and what was the
Springer.
Springer. So, and we, in our walking audits, you can see the difference.
Okay, and great, okay, and it's going and sort of following up on that, do the crossing guards have any way to communicate upwards issues that they're seeing for street safety? Or escalate those?
I think it depends. I think that some of the crossing guards do interact with the principals, but it's not a formalized relationship. They have a relationship with a contractor who is, managed from our police department. So,
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I had. I will throw it over to the chair on the Los Altos side to run through your members, since I'm afraid I do not know all of your names.
Thank you very much for that. And I think what I will ask our commission members to do is focus on the couple questions the couple areas that staff wants our feedback on. Ask your questions to get the information you need for those. And if anyone needs those brought back up again, we can bring them back up. But it's largely around, should we be collaborating with Mountain View on our safe routes to school
this is
project? And I think I would also just say, for those of you who saw Bike Month as one of the new surprises in there, I think Marissa plans to give an update on that later on in the staff reports. So coming. The questions, Commissioner Maloof.
I have a question for, is it Ria? Did I say it correctly?
yes.
I barely see the text at the bottom of the screen. Thank you, Ria, for the presentation. So if you had a magic wand and somebody dropped $10 million in your lap, what would you do with it?
That's a good question. What we have been doing is we know that the city to our north, Palo Alto, has a higher mode share of students riding to school. So we're copying everything that they do. So that's how we came up with the coordinating committee and, all of the things that we've been implementing. So I think that's part of the process. But I think also we're working on a few infrastructure projects, getting a few more engineers might be nice. We've been very short-staffed in the city, so having a few, some staffing to help with some of the infrastructure changes. I think that's something that's there 24/7 to help to be self-enforcing.
So what would be the next thing you'd like to copy from Palo Alto that you haven't copied yet?
I think we're still working on our coordinating committee and the relationship with the school district. So at the moment, it's very much, we really hope that you will be involved in the process. We don't have somebody from each school. In Palo Alto, there's some sort of, it's almost like a contractual arrangement with the school district where they tell the PTA president that you are the traffic safety representative unless you find somebody else. And there's also some money that's involved with that as well for events and that sort of thing. So I think that that's something that we're really still working on. Is I think the relationship has come a long way, and it's fantastic that we have so many parents involved, but I think getting a little bit more structure around that relationship could be beneficial.
I would just add that for our upcoming program for next couple of years, we are really trying to utilize all parts of city to deliver education, not city, school community to deliver education. So we will be developing a curriculum with the school districts, and we are going to be encouraging teachers multiple times a year to deliver those education, because behavior change is the hardest one to do in transportation and the longest one that will stick. So we want to make sure that we are kind of thinking through coordinating committee, curriculum, safety training, bike rodeos, all of the tools that we have available to really distill that behavior change.
And I think the models that Marisa described of having the PE teachers deliver the training, we're very interested in that kind of model as well, because they're there with the kids, they have a relationship with kids. We come in, we kind of are there for one day, tell them all the, the things that they should and shouldn't do. But having that reinforcement, and hopefully also like, for example, if you go on a field trip, you can practice correct crossing of streets, that sort of thing. So kind of the reinforcement throughout the school year.
Commissioner Abbott.
I've got a question for Mountain View on how are you adapting or looking to adapt your Safe Routes to School program in light of the increased housing density and development that is going on left, right, and sideways? What are you specifically doing in the city to reflect those significant demographic changes?
So I think one thing that we do with the housing is we're very proactive in trying to get pedestrian and bicycle improvements with housing projects. So whether that's like some sort of crosswalk for the students getting across the street, those sorts of things we try and get delivered with the new housing. In terms of demographics, I mean, Priority is interacting with our multicultural group. So we have materials in multiple languages. Is there anything else that you wanted to add there, Priority? Maybe to do with our contract for next year?
Yeah, so for the next year contract, we will have a little bit more resources on how we do messaging. One way, that has helped us kind of understand the updating travel pattern as the new housing elements are coming on is really getting feedback on suggested routes map that we have developed. So that has been focus of the coordinating committee. We have taken the maps multiple times to kind of get their thoughts and buy-in. We have taken that to every school that we have done safety training to understand where they walk, where the pain points are. And students would very often say to me that I never knew I lived so close. And, by looking at a map, you're literally 2 blocks away. So then we talk about why aren't you walking? What would make you want to walk, and kind of understand some of those maybe infrastructure gap that we didn't recognize before, but now that people are using, we are learning that feedback. So that's one way we kind of, it's not as proactive. We are kind of still doing the reactive part, but as the program coming in, relaunching, I think in the next couple of years, we are going to be having a little bit better pulse on how the travel pattern is changing and how well we are, estimating and forecasting those needs.
I have a question for Rhea. Rhea, one thing I've noticed is that the buses that run on San Antonio Road that stop right at the corner of Almond and could easily service Los Altos High School students, depending upon where they live, appear to be very underutilized. And I was wondering if your city has had any conversations with VTA about what might be done to perhaps promote people using that public transportation more, if that makes sense.
I'm interested in this question. I'm not aware of that situation, but if you want to send me an email afterwards, we are in conversation with VTA about their transit planning and looking for ways to improve, transit service in the city and in this part of the county.
Then I had a second question, which is that you talked about you've engaged both public and private schools. And I was wondering whether in your experience, there's been receptivity in the part of the private schools to actually work with you in promoting the safe routes to schools for pedestrians and cyclists.
Actually, our current program is just for the public schools, 15 public schools. In the coming contract, we'll expand it to the private schools as well. The receptivity differs from school to school. I know that actually one of the schools in the city of Mountain View, the German International School, actually did their own bike safety training with a certified, league certified instructor. So they're very supportive. And previously, when we offered in the previous program that was funded by the federal government, when we offered the program, I think that GIS was very supportive in particular, and also St. Francis, which is a very large school as well. I'm not sure about the other schools, which tend to be a bit smaller.
One more. I don't want to argue.
Commissioner Rioye?
Also for Mountain View, I'm just curious, how do you prioritize, the programs and projects that you implement for Safe Routes to School?
Programs and projects. So can you explain what you mean by programs and projects? Are you talking about the capital projects?
Either capital improvement projects or, just outreach programs. How do you prioritize between all the possible interventions for Safe Routes to School?
Yoti, do you want to respond on this one?
Yeah, the outreach programs, so we had a pretty defined we have a pretty defined contract with Alta Planning, that is our Safe Routes to School coordinator. So this year, before the school year started, what I did, I kind of sat down with the school district and really understood their schedule, their break patterns, all of the little quirks that school have, and then laid out of like when different programs can happen. So safety training, bike rodeos for middle school, walk audits, surveys, like when it makes sense to have it throughout the year. And then I worked with our consultants to kind of deliver those. So that's one way I received their feedback in just terms of logistics and schedule. In terms of, material messaging, we use a lot of the coordinating committee and our SRO's feedback to understand what needs to happen. So when I started, what we heard, not wearing a helmet was a big issue. So throughout our whole messaging, we kind of prioritized that. Lately, it's been crossing intersection, especially students that are on bikes that are not always stopping at an intersection or pushing the button. There's some education that needs to happen. We have also learned that people have had collisions and didn't report it, and then school ended up reporting it. So there needs to be education on that. So we do lean on our coordinating committee, which consists of parents and SROs and the school staff. In terms of what we deliver with this school, I have worked with the school district, and that has been really successful because they know what to expect. They're scheduling those ahead. I know the staffing needs, that needs to be delivered. So that's how we have done it for this year.
And we also lean on our consultants in terms of what's working.
Yeah.
Let's go to the vice chair.
I had a question for both the staff. So there are some specific recommendations in terms of what the coordinating items are in the proposal. So how do you see this play forward in the next year or so? What is the work plan to get the coordination sort of aligned, and then what's the output of it, and how the commission going to provide feedback to this process?
Do you mind putting that slide back on the screen for your
Yeah,
team?
sure.
So I think the mechanism that Marissa and I kind of initially discussed was meeting, you know, throughout the school year, whether it is quarterly or, you know, every 6 months or so. But it would be really helpful to have that, you know, beginning of the school year as we are doing that planning to know at which point, you know, we need to have checks. I think some of the ideas that we came up with was surveying, consistent on surveying, or developing a consistent suggested route maps, or doing messaging, you know, around the same time that look and feel the same. So, you know, students are not kind of getting confused of, you know, learning different terminologies. So that's what our idea was, that meet quarterly to kind of have those touch points to do a look ahead and see how can we best coordinate on those topics. So that's what we kind of initially had some discussions on, but that's definitely, we're looking for feedback on that.
You just go back a few slides to the identified areas of collaboration.
Yeah, this one.
So the idea of this meeting was to kind of have a high level discussion of areas for collaboration. So these were kind of the ideas that we came up with of potential areas to collaborate. And then after this meeting, once we kind of have everybody's, you know, questions and feedback, that's when we'll kind of dig into the next step and create that work plan that you're asking about. And so you know, these were the areas that we had talked about originally. So I know we have starting from the bottom, because why not? I know we have infrastructure improvements that we are already coordinating on, that you'll find out about later in this meeting. So that includes El Camino and El Monte. And then evaluation metrics and goal setting. I know that's something that we've all talked about in our commission a lot and that we feel strongly about and that we value. And so I thought that having kind of a shared approach to those things between the two cities would be, you know, a kind of efficient and also just beneficial approach. You know, as we all know, the things that you measure are kind of the outcomes that you end up with. And so being aligned on that, I think, would be smart and important and impactful. Event planning, obviously, that's an easy one because, you know, we do share a border that's really counterintuitive as far as its actual geographic location. So easy to plan events together and get, you know, community members from both sides involved. And then walk audits is another, you know, pretty straightforward one because we have this couple schools that we can really collaborate with on those. And then the education messaging, we talked about that a bit in terms of just delivering really consistent messaging to members of both communities so that everybody can receive the same message. Everybody can receive the same message from, you know, even different bodies so that it's a little bit more reinforced as far as our expectation and our request. And then sharing the curriculum and aligning the survey so that we can collect similar data and then we can compare it because we'll have a larger data pool if we collect it the right way.
So if you have any questions, any questions?
Are there any remaining questions from the Los Altos Commission?
We have a couple more, I think, Commissioner Maloof.
Yeah, so that's the question to, I guess, the entire Mountain View side, and then you guys can pick and choose who would be best to answer. If there's one thing you'd like to ask of Los Altos, what would it be?
Sorry.
What's
I'm
that?
used to unmuting myself. I think just the coordination is helpful, like because our students go across, I want to have a better understanding of, for example, the students that go to Los Altos High School, what messaging are they getting on that side? I think it's, you know, just kind of basic coordination and making sure we're not double counting and sending in Measure B numbers and they're double counting Los Altos High School students, for example. We have other Mountain View students that go to some schools that are located in Los Altos. I think Covington has students from near San Antonio Station, and there's a few other schools like that as well. So kind of getting kind of an understanding of their full route to school and what the opportunities are there for improving it.
And I have one question. Can you just quickly help me understand the complexity of your coordination with school districts? Basically, how many school districts across how many cities? In other words, is Los Altos School District, Mountain View, Los Altos High School District, and Mountain View Wisman School District, are those the only school districts where Mountain View residents attend, or is there more public school districts?
Yeah, so there's the three of them.
And then does Mountain View Wisman School District span beyond the city of Mountain View borders, or is it just city of Mountain View?
It's just within the city of Mountain View.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful because I think what I'm hearing from that is it's largely our city you would be coordinating with and not others. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
We don't overlap with Palo Alto or with Sunnyvale. However, while we were doing audits, I did find students, or at least one student, who was going to a Palo Alto school from Mountain View. So maybe that's, you know, they might have more than one house that they're staying at, for example.
What about Foothill College? We need to hold public comment until the very next section.
I think that's the end of our questions and look from Los Altos Commission.
Then with that, we will move to public comment for item 4.2, safe routes to school. As a reminder to anyone who has joined late, we are taking item 4.2 and 4.1 out of order. El Monte will be a later item. So for item 4.2, do we have any public comments in the room in Mountain View? Form an orderly queue. And we will have a 3-minute timer. Do we have a visible timer, or will we just?
I'll keep time.
Okay, thank you, Brandon.
So I'm not sure who I'm speaking to, and I apologize. I'm turning my back to you. I don't know. I have no idea where the camera is. My name is Serge Bonds. I actually live in Mountain View, but I'm in one. I'm in the part of Mountain View that belongs to the Los Altos School District, and also is assigned to Los Altos High School. So my son, even though he was, raised in Mountain View, went to schools only in Los Altos, but physically. He went to Almond Elementary, Egan Junior High, and Los Altos High. He walked, biked, and scooted there for 12 some years, without any issues. However, we were never on any route to school map from either Mountain View or Los Altos. So I think that in terms of collaboration, this is, there are a lot of people like us, in between. And, that's another count when you look at students walking and so on. It's also another side when you look at improvements, because we don't exist on the maps. I mean, really, literally. So in terms of collaboration, I think I like to see more collaborations on the data aspect to it. So when you do the surveys, do it all at once, and then differentiate, if somebody is from Los Altos or Mountain View, I mean, so that you can do this, but do it, holistically everywhere. And also, one thing that struck me is that you seem to be basing things on surveys and things like this. So typically these are people who are involved, more involved, if you will, or more receptive to walking and biking. But there is basic data that each school district collects in terms of demography, because they do this all the time to look at attendance areas, looking where they need schools and so on. So we can look at any things, and this tells you exactly where the students live, really, in relations to each of the schools, where there is growth, where there is things. And I think this is really something you should use as kind of your target, really. I mean, any of the students should be able to walk or bike to school safely. Not only, if they want to have parents involved who answer the surveys, or if it's for high school students, people who, when your student thinks about it, so which is not often. Otherwise, I think the programs are very good. So I tend to see more of the effects of the programs on the Los Altos school side because, you know, the geography really. So in my neighborhood in Mountain View, we saw a lot of these signs about slowdown, and they are, you know, it's very nice to see. And I've seen a lot of the improvements that have been made
30
on
seconds.
Almond and so on. I also live next to El Monte, so that's just perfect agenda item for me.
Here, just 1 second. I'll move this podium so people can be seen.
And as a remind, well, if there are any specific questions raised by members of the public, I will attempt to summarize them and then ask them once we are done with all the public comment to keep any questions that are done short and concise rather than initiating any back and forth during the public comment period.
I am Matt Stengel in Los Altos. I frequently bike ride by Los Altos High School. So I had a couple comments. Jordan is a hot mess, morning and the afternoon. The cars, there's too many people dropping off people. That's because you shoved it all from the front side of the school to the back side. So you have a hot mess. And then Gordon Avenue is also a hot mess because with pickups, because parents park their cars in the do not parking everywhere. And then in Los Altos High really just has too many cars coming in and parking. So maybe it's just an artifact of all the construction they have. They don't have enough on campus parking, but all the side streets are now getting covered with student parking. My other question is, I think there's something not addressed by your study on the Los Altos High School was the impact to Egan. There's a lot of middle school kids going down Jordan at the same time. And you're heavily impacting those younger kids going through there because of all that traffic that you shoved onto Jordan. And then the other thing is Distill Drive at El Camino is a hot mess at 8 to 9 in the morning, going both directions. People are going left and because the majority of those Mountain View kids that go to Los Altos are driving. They don't have a route. So I think that covers I just wanted to make quickly point that you guys are really, Jordan's a hot mess. And the cops can go out and try to enforce it, but these people, they're parking in the bike lane. It's just literally not safe. I appreciate your efforts. I'm just telling you that there's always these side effects.
Hi, I'm Terry Bush from Los Altos. And for the safe routes to school, my son rode his bike for 2 years from Hollingsworth Drive all the way up El Monte to Foothill College. And he actually almost got hit at least a couple of times on there. So I would say possibly reach out to Foothill College and see if they are interested in working with you, because that's a serious issue there.
My name's Jerry Maloney. I live in Los Altos and I bike a lot. And I think one request we had is after the storm on El Monte, there's a ton of tree branches fell down. And it's been, I think now, about a month, and it's still not really cleaned up. And we actually went ourselves and raked some of it up because it was like, right in the bike lane. So, and the crazy thing was we saw the street cleaner and they only cleaned like one block of the El Monte and not the other. This is on like Hollingsworth and Sparger, part of El Monte. So I don't know if you guys can do anything about getting better street sweep cleaning of these bike lines after storms. Thank you.
Do we have any further public comments within the room in Mountain View? Seeing none, are there any in-person public comments in Los Altos?
There are not any in-person comments here today.
All right, Brandon, do we have any virtual public comments? And
Yes,
as a reminder, you can raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 if you're on the phone.
Yes, we do. Celia Paymer, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Celia Paymer. I'm a resident of Mountain View since 2007, and I also work at Los Altos High School. So hopefully I can speak to why coordination would be a great idea. I think it would be a really good idea to have that coordination I'm happy with the progress I've seen in Mountain View as a parent of students who go to Mountain View Wisman. One thing, I actually just saw that poster you made for Los Altos High School the other day and took a picture and shared it in our Slack channel. And I think it would be a really good idea for postcards to go out to all neighbors, not just the students, because if residents who know about the safe routes to school and the start times know to avoid those routes, that could also be really beneficial to the safety of students. And if they have some flexibility, they might say, hey, I'll leave 10 minutes later. Brandon, the Mountain View folks know how much I pushed for a stop sign at Montalto. I think some areas that are right on the border that really need some stop signs and some discussion between the cities is one at Springer and Maryland, because that's a crossing point for Los Altos students. And then another one at, and actually I think, no, they all go to Springer in our neighborhood, but for Los Altos they do. And then at Jardin and East Drive to the campus, right now it's an unprotected stop for cars going, or going along Hardin, and that's part of the danger that's there. Also, I think some bollards to prevent drop off in front of the driveway would be a good idea, as it's a really big choke point for the pedestrians and bikers already. One thing I would also like to see is coordination on messaging. I do like the sort of idea of having yard signs, for instance, the "we slow down for our neighbors" signs that I think Los Altos did. But those ones are very car centric, which gives me, I cringe a little bit every time I see them. I would love to see something more like "we walk and roll for the safety of our friends." The assumption that we slow down means we assume we're driving already. So I would like to get out of the car and onto other forms of transportation in our messaging. And then last but not least, there was a mention of the buses. I think there's been some coordination with the free shuttles, although they only stop at the middle schools right now. But my understanding was pre-COVID in the past, they sometimes had routes that went by the high school. So that's an opportunity as well. And then finally, from my understanding within the district, I believe both schools, they're not exactly 50-50, but they both have a pretty solid mix from both cities at Los Altos and Mountain View high schools. So thank you for your time.
All right, Jill Woodford, I'm going to click to allow you to talk, then you'll have 3 minutes. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. I just want to say thank you for the road diet on El Monte. That's going to be wonderful. There is, I heard there's a grant that just got, is in the process of coming to the city of Los Altos for bicycle improvements and pedestrian improvements along San Antonio Road. And I wonder if there's going to be coordination with Mountain View specifically for the students coming from the other side of El Camino that are coming to Egan, because I know there's been quite a lot of complaints. One of the teachers at the school actually reached out to me because there are kids biking and crossing El Camino, and they're, not feeling safe or having incidents on the way to school. And so I'm kind of hopeful that whatever improvements happen on the Los Altos side of San Antonio with that grant money, that could continue over to the Mountain View side. And then I just am looking through the Safe Routes to School program updates, and I know people have been expecting more crossing guards in Los Altos. Possibly, I've even heard rumors like sometimes they're promised they're going to get more crossing guards and the council approves them, but then they don't ever happen, and I'm not sure why. And I see that Mountain View expanded their program, and I'm wondering if Los Altos has any plans to expand their crossing guard program. And then also, it looks really significant that the reason people aren't walking or biking to school is because of the cars on the road, and they're feeling unsafe and poor driving behavior on the streets. And then, obviously lack of biking facilities, we can address that hopefully. But concerns about personal safety and poor driving behavior on streets near schools, I wonder if there's any kind of plan to address that, particularly potentially closing down roads for cars during pickup and drop off time, or is there any collaboration between these groups and the police department or the city council? Because I feel like there's a real problem with lack of enforcement. We've lived here in Los Altos over 20 years. And when we first moved in, people got tickets and they were stopped for not stopping at stop signs. And, you know, I think it was a little bit safer. Now, I see police ignoring people blow through stop signs. It seems like the driving is much, much more dangerous now. And I'm wondering what is being done to address the enforcement are you putting any pressure from these groups? Thank you.
April Webster, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, April Webster speaking. Thank you for letting me comment. I wanted to talk to two things quickly. One, the previous speaker sort of alluded to it, and that, you know, how to make it safer. Maybe, I don't know if she spoke really to education, but maybe awareness of for drivers and whatnot. And I was wanting to put the idea out there of perhaps a joint critical mass between Mountain View and Los Altos. It's an international movement and event, once in the spring and once in the fall. We're obviously too late for May, but perhaps something in, I think it's mid-September is the next one, which could help raise awareness. It's been impactful in other countries. Started in San Francisco, I think it was a year or two ago now. It's hard to remember with the pandemic, but maybe something like that might be useful. And then I am going to make a pitch for introducing, wherever possible, green complete streets for some of these safe routes to school for a number of reasons. And it's, I guess I haven't spoken this before, but not just for, it makes for a more comfortable and enjoyable experience for folks. It's perceived to be safer. It's by folks who usually fall into, which kids probably do, into the group of riders who are a bit more tentative. They are not considered the fearless and strong riders all of the time. So that might help to some extent. And it's just, you know, there are climate benefits as well. But yeah, I just wanted to make that pitch. It's coming down the pipeline. Caltrans Complete Streets has the green streets elements that they're adding into their design documents, and there seems to be more funding. So thank you so much. I see my time.
I have no more hands up.
All right, thank you for all of our public commenters. As a reminder to everyone, there are on Mountain View's website, there are email addresses for Safe Routes to School if you have specific questions. The one specific question I did hear in there was about Foothill College, and as I recall, there are also, unless this program has been discontinued, there's some number of high school students in the district that do programs at Foothill and or DeAnza College.
That's true, that's true.
Do we have any specific programs related to that, or are we relying largely on things like the VTA buses to get students there?
Yeah, the latter.
Okay. Thank you. With that, we will move to the city or the various committee comments. If we could have the slide with those two topic points up, that would be great. As I recall, they are somewhat open-ended. We will, I think the most effective way to do this is to plan to basically just go around each room and make comments. If there are things that require discussion, we can do that. If you have further questions for staff because something else needs clarification, that is also welcome. There's no specific thing that requires any motions or such. Is that correct? Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry, getting there.
Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I think given the time we've spent on this item and what's upcoming on our agenda, I think our commission is going to try to be succinct, but still give all the feedback we want to give.
Yes. Yes. If you have heard someone say what you were thinking of saying, you can just say that you echo their comments, and please, everyone, be succinct.
Here.
Would you guys like to? How about the Los Altos Commission begin, since we began the clarifying questions?
Sure, we'll do that. We'll try to be the model of succinctness. Who would like to go first? Commissioner Miller?
First, I want to applaud both cities, Marissa, Ria, and I'm sorry, I know that transportation planner. I can't read your name, so forgive me, please. PRT, thank you. I think I want to applaud the three of you for really working together closely. I know we can get great ideas in the shower, but when we work together, we get much better ideas. So keep doing what you're doing. That's awesome. Second quick thought is you have a captive audience in the schools. So you've got to involve the schools. That's how you're going to get them to change behavior. I love the idea of the PE training. It's fantastic. Do more of it, but find ways for the school principals and the school institution to really influence those students because they're touching those students every day of the week, almost 5 days a week. So they're going to have a lot more influence on behavior change than you would. The last point is I see a lot of opportunities for carrots. You're doing a fantastic job. Think about the stick. We don't change behavior if there's no notion of a stick somewhere. I don't know what that stick is, whether it's more, more expensive citations for violations or perhaps restricting parking, but something that essentially makes it establishes some degree of a penalty, not egregious, but some degree of a penalty that begins to push the parents and the students in the direction that we want them to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Go ahead, Tom.
A couple things. One, we talked a little bit about Foothill College and looking that up, and that's actually in Los Altos Hills. So is there any coordination between Los Altos Hills residents or schools and Los Altos itself or Mountain View? It's just kind of an open-ended thing for something to think about. The other one was we also talked a lot about Mountain View residents going to Los Altos schools, but the reverse has not been really addressed, which is Los Altos residents going to Mountain View schools, more specifically there, like Mountain View High School, which has been a opening, not been addressed on our side either. So that's it.
Thank you. Next, Commissioner Oyen.
Just wanted to build on Commissioner Snyder's comment. One gap that we saw when we were looking at the mobile app experience for Safe Routes to School is if you log in and look up, if I'm a Los Altos resident and I look up Mountain View High School, it's not there. You see a lot of other schools, but if I happen to live in the Mountain View High School area, I don't have a map, so I would echo the first public commenter who said that there are people who are kind of caught in between the two cities and aren't represented. And so I think this collaboration would be a great way to close those gaps.
Commissioner, oh, sorry, go ahead. No, finish, Commissioner Oyen.
I'm sure it'll be said.
No.
Nope. No, I think some of the things that I've already brought up and I think are great ways to collaborate are collecting data and doing the surveying together in a joint manner, and also being able to share the learnings from anything that has been done in the past as well as in the future, so that we're not in our own boxes trying to get the same incomplete information. So I think that'd be really great for us to see.
Echo the collaboration on survey and data collection. Anytime you can be consistent across surveys and data that you collect, it's better and more powerful, and you have a better story to tell to get more money. So same data, same questions, asked the same way, at the same week, at the same time, so that you have comparability. Super important for data collection. The second point is I would ask both cities to include their chief of police or traffic enforcement in every conversation, so that you two can hear what your respective police departments can and cannot do with regards to traffic enforcement. We know we have 3 police officers, one, pardon me, I was corrected, 1 on duty during school hours drop off. They can't cover 8 grammar schools, 2 middle schools, and 2 high schools. They're just 1. So I think bringing those voices into your meetings and to your collaborative sessions can only help. So I would encourage you to do that. And also bring in your crossing guard program as well. I think one of the challenges we have in Los Altos is hiring. We can't find qualified people to fill the jobs. So if we can start to collaborate on that, maybe there's a hiring pool that we can start to draw from and share. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Go ahead, Vice Chair.
In the interest of being succinct, I'll just say support everything that people have said here. And I think you have identified the areas of coordination that are high priority, and I agree with those areas. I'm really looking forward to you guys fleshing out the work and coming back to us and getting more support as we move forward. Thank you to both the teams.
And Commissioner Katz, you have anything you want to add?
No, I think everything's been said. Thank you.
Well, in nature of syncness, I'm going to say ditto. And I will add a couple more things. In the bigger picture, hearing Mountain View's goal is to be like Palo Alto. That's what we want to be too. So yes, let's join this. And going along with what Commissioner Snyder said, let's see if Los Altos Hills is interested in joining as well, because their kids come to schools in our city, with the exception of Gartner Bullis High School, to see if there's resources and coordination and pooling. And then if we can be Palo Alto, then maybe the move after that is to get the people in the South to follow Palo Alto and us. And bring them along in ways we can along the way. But given what Mountain View has said about their borders, this just seems much easier to advance. So a couple other quick things. Love the idea of the signs, not just the car-centric ones. I think slowing down is important because we do have a speed problem, but encouraging walking and biking. So next time we do signs, we could consider parallel things. Regarding crossing guards, let's not have crossing guard envy. Let's have, there's the California Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices that kind of spells out some what roadways qualify for crossing guards. Let's look at it for what qualifies. I think as we continue to get this program going, besides just modeling Palo Alto, we could also look at what Los Gatos is doing. They have a option where people can come in with the commissions and with the staff and with the police and say, these are the areas I'm having issues with. And then each of those individual areas gets looked at, should there be improvements made on that specific spot or not. So I think we have a lot of infrastructure to put in place before we're there, but that would be a great future vision of where we're headed. And I think that one of our big challenges is going to be getting the school districts to agree to teach this curriculum at school. So don't underestimate that challenge. They do it in Palo Alto, but that hurdle was crossed a long time ago in close collaboration. And this is something we may need some executive help to help make happen. And I wouldn't let us just say, oh, the school district said no, call the executives and let's get that sorted out. And I also heard suggestions on education, including in the education of teaching people how to report incidences. Yes, please. Palo Alto had a huge education effort on that quite a few years ago. And I think there's a lot of people here that just don't know. So I'm sure there's a lot more things to say, but I promise we're going to be succinct. And I'm quite certain you'll be coming back to us in the future on an ongoing basis with this issue. So Chair, that's what we have on our end.
All right, thank you. I will basically just circle around this room since I assume everyone will have comments. So in that case, Member Park.
Thank you. So yes, on coordination, more the merrier. As far as suggested approaches, I like the approach of moving drop-off zones away from schools. So Los Altos proved it could be done on Almond. We need to do the same on Jardin. Many school districts now require drop-off zones be at least 400 yards from the school to force everybody to walk a little and distribute the traffic around many streets. I would fully endorse that concept for at least 15 minutes on the most rush hour, so that rather than concentrate on one block in front of the driveway, there are 10 blocks where people are being dropped off for all schools, high school or elementary. So I think that's something we should look at doing. And we all heard that Jardin or Hardin is a hot mess. The bike lanes are no longer bike lanes. Hopefully that can be fixed.
Member Atomic?
Yes, so maybe this is already going on, but I think it would be nice to coordinate on the route that's to Los Altos High that goes Rankstor, then El Camino, then Distal, because on the walk, we saw that some students go that way and it's not ideal. I didn't hear mention that much of bike parking. On one visit to Graham, the students very much did not enjoy the bike cage. And so I think especially with a larger sample size, one could see whether schools that provide easier parking for bikes, so not just bike safety in terms of like your bike won't get stolen, but like also just convenience. Whether that increases student participation because they don't have the stress of crowding, et cetera, first thing when they get to school. Then I do think it might be good to experiment again with like larger sample of schools with messaging earlier. So for our son, both when he started Graham and now that he's going to start at Mountain View High, the next thing after filling out the enrollment paperwork is doing the walking or biking route to figure out how he's going to get to school. So you're thinking like he's going to school, but like literally, how is he going to get to school? And I think that period of months is important for getting into the right mindset. And I've mentioned this before in our meeting, but a friend who lives in the Wisman area and was going to commute to Crittenden gave up because they tried Middlefield Road and just said, oh, that's terrible, we're not going to do it. And I think to this day, the kid doesn't ride his bike to school. And I think that's too bad. And maybe the outcome would have been different if there was information provided with like, welcome, you're going to be attending the school and here's how you can get there, like right off the bat. And if they don't feel like they can do it right away, they can wait for the safety training, but still, I think like it's just how you're thinking about that next year. And I know like kids and parents get excited. Then I was curious, and this might already be done, just success in bike safety training, what the metrics are. One thing is like learning to bike defensively but the other is like not being reckless. So how do we measure whether kids are being reckless or not? And then how do we measure whether they just have good smarts about surviving out there with all the cars? Okay, this is totally, okay, I'm not being succinct here, but I would love to know the social aspect, because if kids can get to school walking or biking, it means that they can get to each other's houses, probably walking or biking too. So I think it would be really neat for the Mountain View Los Altos angle if we could figure out whether kids who bike actually have more cross-city friends or something because they can just get to them. I think that would be a great incentive. Like, oh, you think you're just getting your kid to school, but actually you're maybe not allowing them to be as independent socially. And then finally, and this is probably in the data too, just understanding safe routes versus actual routes. Like as with the bike cages, kids are very sensitive to a few minutes here or there. So I was really surprised talking to some neighbors. I thought they were all going to take Stevens Creek Trail to Mountain View High School, but some of them bike on Grant because it's a few minutes shorter. So I think that would also be interesting. And then final survey thing is, I think it would be really interesting to know how many people tried and gave up. Like the ones who are saying it's not safe, is it because they tried and they were like, I just can't do it? Or is it that they just didn't try and therefore there's a chance?
Was there specific question?
Not that I.
Okay, great. Sorry, I couldn't tell. Okay, Vice Chair Stitt.
I just have one thing to add.
All of us are here for the Almonte corridor store study. So finish up, please.
In terms of additional approaches, when I first started, my daughter first started attending school, we were living in Shoreline West, which is pretty far away from Randall's Elementary. And it's a bit far for a first grader to ride on her bike. And it wasn't until just before lockdown, I found out that there was some neighbors were doing a bike bus where they would get together and they would all bike together. And if I had known that earlier, then it would have been easier and we would have biked more frequently. So if there's a way that Safe Routes to School could potentially coordinate with parents and find out, you know, make these matches, say, you know, you guys are all going, why don't you go together? It'll be safer and also incentivized. That's my own comment.
Member Finlock.
Yeah, I just really want to say, just ditto to all the public comments, really strongly agree with all of those. I agree with the drop-off zones, but also beware of unintentional consequences, other traffic issues. I heard some comments on the stick as well. I think some targeted enforcement, maybe not the first day of school when people are trying to figure everything out, but in the first few weeks of school to make sure it's safe. I know our traffic unit is limited, but sending them out during specific times of year and coordinating, I think is awesome. Hope Mountain View can do things like the paint and curb extensions. I love all of the different projects Saltus is doing. I'd love to see more of that type of stuff in Mountain View and vice versa. And I'm really excited about this.
Thank you. I think I've agreed with everything that's been mentioned so far. The additional things I mentioned was, firstly, I would like us to be tracking things to make sure we're actually hearing feedback from parents and schools that are representative of our student demographics. I can see it being easy that we get most feedback from the parents who have the most free time. So I want to be careful with that, so we should be collecting data appropriately. As alluded to when I was asking questions earlier, I'd like to see some sort of explicit way that crossing guards can escalate safety issues that they observe so that that can be at least tracked, if not actually addressed. I don't know the right way to approach enforcement, but it does seem like there is a role for it. I would be careful about that. I recall as a student, my view of the police was more as a group that would be likely to annoy me about rolling through a stop sign slowly rather than as a group that would actually do anything about cars misbehaving. I don't know that that was an accurate perception, but I could believe that perception is still persisting among students, and that's so thing to be careful about, but I would like to see us actually enforcing traffic laws. And I would like to make sure that we are keeping an eye on how students get to and from school outside of the regular peak hours. I know that when I was a student, and to some degree I still help instigate this by helping out the Mount Shasta robotics team. There's a good number of students who are getting to and from the school in the dark, with at all sorts of hours for all sorts of after school activities, or getting to and from the school on the weekends. And those are situations where the safety issues become different. Some bike lanes in Mountain View cease to be bike lanes, variety of things like that. I think that is all of my comments. Is there anything that there was any contradiction on or the such the staff wanted clarification?
I think this is good feedback. Thank you.
All right. With that, we will close item 4.2 and we will move to item 4.1. The
Sure.
L1. Oh,
I will be recusing myself for the rest of the meeting since I live within 500 feet of Belmonte Avenue.
all right, thank you. Member Barton has recused himself for this meeting.
Oh, that's all right. I mean, I don't need to hold this.
Yes. This is Elmonte. This is item 4.1, the Elmonte Avenue corridor study. We have a presentation.
Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I think we have a request for just a 5-minute bio break here.
I think that is appropriate, so we can stop the meeting and return at 7:48.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a reminder to everyone, we are still being recorded.
I feel like it's.
Gonna have all those kids coming down on e-bikes to the high school, all 2,500 e-bikes.
Have you seen them?
I have seen,
No hands, no helmet?
I've seen it. trust me,
And
I've seen it.
you yelled at them? Because I have.
Have you seen it? Somebody rides at the back.
And the passenger.
Like, yes, and I yelled at them. I yelled at that one too.
Have you seen the Have you seen the skateboard one where somebody on the skateboard?
I yelled at that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a good lady that yells at people. Getting a reputation. Another one. Yep.
Also depends on how big the bike is. the batteries, right?
Oh my God, yeah, I've seen those batteries that get bigger and bigger.
Some of the batteries.
Not good.
Things they don't go as fast.
I don't think so. It's flat. I think an extra 25 watts of power and they're fine.
Well, right. but-
Sorry, I had to delay this because this is.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what they're selling right now. It's like, trying to sell a.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bike.
It should be probably in 3 weeks that I can,
Just wanted
Right.
to.
Every day, right? If you're riding a long time, I don't know, they didn't even think about this.
They don't want that much power.
They didn't need to give them that.
Capping the speed.
Well, that's great. I'm, a couple of my neighbors don't like that. I mean, I'm not hot for the medium, but.
Only buy it.
Can't do that.
Only can buy certain amount.
Because I'm coming out here trying to take a left, but I think it will slow, I mean, it's gonna be a big improvement. The other night I tried to come out here and make a left. It was so hard.
Yeah, right about.
It's very variable. If it can slow those people down, because there's a couple of people that are high, like to go 50 miles an hour about this.
What's the other one? Yeah. the classes. That's what-
Did you guys measure the speed when you did the survey?
I don't know, last one is only pedal assist.
Yeah, we have the speeds.
Not that.
So we
I
do
know,
have some
but-
speeds going over it.
Oh, you should.
Yes, yes.
Because the thing is that intersection they did at almost
We're not on it.
There you go.
and El Camino. That was
Not ready, that tells you exactly how you do it.
Because used to, I would always go around when I'm coming back there. Now I can trustfully, faithfully go here.
There's probably invented.
Where it's-
Find something like that.
Probably got 3D printed in the garage, that train parts.
Wait a second, you're 360. Going 35 miles an hour.
Well, I think the road diet's gonna be, I mean, because it's gonna, the choke point will be a little bit right here.
Nice to yell at students. With a little badge, we could just yell. But you didn't anything for that, you feel people.
So this is gonna be better to get in now, this thing, because this is like a Mr. Life moment.
A little surprised.
Choke point will be in here. That'll be okay, because.
Oh, that. That is.
I believe coming back here.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
The wrong hour.
And this room, I don't know.
I'd like to have more capacity here, but it's just ridiculous.
That's something we can work with. It's very nice.
I mean, it needs to be 2 lanes, but I'm only concerned about this guy. Not that I think this is gonna be safer, but there's a lot of cars.
All right, I believe it is 7:40. Is Los Altos ready? Oh, I don't know if we're ready.
Drive is.
All right, you want us back? Yeah.
Mountain View is ready.
Okay, and,
Moment, we're waiting for city staff.
okay.
We're waiting for city staff. Give us 30 seconds.
All of them. All the way.
Some wrists in the back.
No, I didn't want it. Yeah, we did well. We did very well.
This is your photo from the PG tree stand.
That's amazing.
Is there a way for us to get into?
Finger 23, now it's fall 23. Next thing I know, it's gonna be like. Very old man on my e-bike running.
Are we, we're still waiting on Masatos?
Marissa, where'd you go?
I don't know.
Where's Tom?
Yeah, I should, so staff members disappear.
Would it be appropriate to begin the presentation, or would you like?
I think we should wait. We're waiting for our two staff members. If you can please be patient with us for a few more minutes.
Well. Oh, yeah. Is the one who thought about that? Oh, wow. Yeah. Was this? Yes, it's changed.
I hear someone. Is Marissa back there? We were waiting for someone. Yeah, she's right.
Okay. So we have one of our staff people back, so I would say that you guys can go ahead and start.
All right, then we will
Most of
continue
our
the meeting
people are back now.
now, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairperson and members of the BPAC, both from City of Mountain View and City of Los Altos. My name is Darwin Galang, Senior Traffic Engineer from Mountain View. I'm joined by Teferia Berry here and also Ravi Narayanan, who's online. They're both from Mount McDonald, they're project consultant for this study. We're also joined by Carla Ochoa, Senior Traffic Engineer from Mountain View. The presentation tonight is about the Monte Avenue Corridor Study. Next slide, please. In this presentation, I touched on some background information about the study, including its goals and how we got to this point. Then I'll present the road dike concept as the preferred alternative for the study. And lastly, we'll talk about the next steps and schedule of the study. The Monte Avenue Corridor focuses on these 9 intersections. 2 intersections are along El Camino Real at Escola Avenue and El Monte Avenue intersection. And the other 7 intersections are along El Monte Avenue from El Camino Real to Springer Road and J Street and the south. The study also includes evaluating various improvements throughout the corridor, not just the intersections. Next slide, please. The main goals of the study are to develop a multimodal transportation conceptual plan for pedestrian and bicycle safety and to also improve traffic operations along the corridor. The conceptual plans are intended to evaluate the corridor to determine space allocation for new improvements within the available right-of-way width. So how do we get to this point of the study? In 2020, staff held 3 previous meetings designed to get the community and BPAC's feedback on issues along the corridor and on the first 2 alternatives proposed by staff. During the previous BPAC meeting, the committee requested the staff perform a road dike analysis, which was completed in late 2021. Staff then held another public outreach meeting and an online survey last year to promote additional community engagement and to present to the community the road dike concept, which ultimately brought us here today. And tonight's focus will be on the road dike concept for the study. Based on our first community meeting, the top 6 challenges perceived by residents as to why the corridor provides an unsafe environment, which you see on the screen. As mentioned earlier, BPAC requested that staff explore a road dike alternative, essentially to address high vehicle volumes and high vehicle speeds along the corridor. Slide, please. From feedback received during the first meeting, staff prepared 2 corridor-wide design alternatives for the city. In a nutshell, alternative 1 proposes to keep all side street access open as the corridor operates today, while providing 4 travel lanes and stripe or raised buffer bike lanes on both sides of the street. While alternative 2 proposes to restrict access on some side streets with the installation of new concrete median islands, while also providing similar cross-section. Before I focus on presenting the road diet concept, I would like to go over a couple slides that will show improvements that will be part of all the alternatives, 1, 2, and 3 being the road diet alternative. Here you can see El Camino Real from Escola Avenue to Almonte Avenue, high visibility crosswalks at each intersection, green bike lanes at conflict areas, removal of the slip lane from eastbound El Camino Real to southbound Almonte Avenue, and maintaining 2 left turn lanes from westbound El Camino Real to southbound Almonte Avenue will all be part of all the alternatives. During design, staff will look into implementing protected intersection treatments for feasible and dependent upon Caltrans approval. In addition, other corridor-wide improvements include ladder-style, high visibility crosswalks, enhanced street lighting, ADA compliant curb ramps, green bike lane at conflict areas, striping and signage improvements, and green street elements were feasible. Now let's talk about the road diet. What is a road diet? As shown in this slide, a road diet is a roadway reconfiguration which involves converting an undivided 4-lane roadway into 3 lanes made up of 2 through lanes and a center 2-way left turn lane. Essentially, the road diet allows the roadway to be reallocated for other uses such as bike lanes, buffer, or potentially green street elements or pedestrian crossing median islands. The road diet analysis generally found value to applying a road diet along the corridor. This slide shows the benefits and potential impacts of the alternative. A road diet along Almonte Avenue would increase safety, mobility, and comfort level for both bicyclists and pedestrians. It will reallocate roadway to other uses such as bike lanes, buffers, and refuge island, increasing motorist recognition and improving driver awareness. It will also reduce traffic volume, speed, and potentially frequency of traffic collisions along the corridor by reducing weaving, left turn conflicts, and vehicle interactions. The road diet would serve as a natural traffic calming by reducing lanes and limiting the single lane speed to the speed of the lead vehicle. On the other hand, a road diet could also divert traffic to other local streets. It could make turning movements more difficult due to fewer breaks in traffic, and it would reduce the capacity of the roadway. The next few slides will show the road diet concept, its cross sections and conceptual plans, which staff believes is a feasible and preferred alternative along the corridor. Existing conditions along Almonte Avenue include 4 travel lanes with bicycle lanes on both sides of the street. With the road diet alternative as shown on top, Almonte Avenue corridor can potentially have 2 travel lanes, 1 2-way left turn lane, and stripe or raised buffer bike lanes on both sides of the street. The buffered area would be raised in locations that do not conflict with driveways or crossings. The image below shows a cross section at Hollingsworth Drive where staff proposes to install a median island instead of a 2-way left turn lane. This is a reminder that the study aims to develop conceptual plans to determine space allocation for improvements within existing roadway, and specific details of the improvements will be finalized during design. Here you can see the start of the road diet as we transition from 2 lanes to 1 lane along southbound Almonte Avenue as you cross Marriage Way. This slide shows you a longer stretch of the typical cross section along Almonte Avenue with 2 true lanes and a center 2-way left turn lane with striped or raised buffer bike lanes on both sides of the street. Here you can see the location where staff proposes to install median islands and left turn pockets instead of a center 2-way left turn lane. The installation of median islands provides a median refuge for pedestrians crossing Almonte Avenue and also prevents legal use of a two-way left turn lane to pass lower traffic or access an upstream turn lane. This slide shows the southern portion of the corridor as we continue the road diet concept up to Springer Road. City staff has been in constant communication with the city of Los Altos, and they are aware of the three proposed corridor-wide alternatives, including a road diet concept. In addition, both cities plan to look for opportunities and funding to potentially extend the project limits to include the intersection of Almonte Avenue and Springer Road, if possible, to better transition to the recent bike improvements that the city of Los Altos has completed along Almonte Avenue on their side of town. As mentioned earlier, staff launched an online survey to promote wider community engagement, and here are some noteworthy feedback from the survey. The community supports the concept of a two-way left turn lane, but opposes the concept of left turn access restrictions on the side streets, which is alternative 2. And the community also supported the road diet concept as the most preferred alternative out of the 3. Based on an analysis which identified several benefits of the road diet alternative, including traffic calming effects of reduced speed and conflicts, improved safety for other modes of travel, and the strong support from the 3rd community meeting and survey results, staff recommends that the BPAC recommend to this Council Transportation Committee, or CTC, the road diet alternative as the preferred conceptual plan for the study. As for the next steps of the study, staff plans to present the road diet as preferred alternative, including feedback received from the community and the BPAC to the Council Transportation Committee next month, and then to City Council in June 2023. The study completion date is anticipated in the summer of this year, and design is anticipated to start in 2024 and construction in late 2025. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to the BPAC clarifying questions. I think as before, we will start with the Mountain View BPAC. Who would like to start? I assume at least one of you has questions.
That was a bit shorter than I expected.
Shane?
Yeah, I think mine were answered. I'm not sure if we're kind of calling out some of the questions we did send in advance for Santos, but
There were 14 questions sent to the so, or well, I think it was slightly less, but yeah, I have a couple of questions myself then. One is reiterating what I think is relevant question from the community Q&A is what would the buffer itself in alternative 3 look like? I realize it's not set in stone, but what is the intention for that? For the buffer between the bike lane and the vehicle lanes?
So the buffer, as part of the design, we will take a look at different options that we could use. For some areas, we could stick with just striping if there's limited space. But where areas there where there's wider buffer, we could look at either use of flexible delineators or concrete or rubber curbs, or even green street elements were feasible.
Thank you. A question that occurred to me during the presentation is, are there any plans for adjusting the turn radii or doing bulb outs on any of the streets that connect to side streets that connect to Almonte, like Marriage Way or the such?
At this point, there are no plans to doing that. We are, however, upgrading all the curb ramps to be ADA compliant curb ramps. If needed, we can take a look at that during design.
And with regards to the mention of potential protected intersection elements on the sort of whole Escuela El Monte El Camino intersection, both what would those elements potentially look like, and when will we find out if Caltrans is inclined to go along with that?
At this point of the study, we do not have any design for the protected intersection. Staff had submitted an application for an OVAC fund, and we received that funding for the stretch of El Camino Real between La Escuela and Almonte. And the goal for that is one, to basically bring into life what the El Camino streetscape plan is envisioned, and that's including, where possible, include protected intersection treatments, whether that's, reducing the curb radii and you having protected bike lanes, that will be looked at during the design.
Thank you. I will hand it over to the Los Altos Commission for any specific clarifying questions that you have for Mountain View, or I guess for Los Altos staff.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think if it's okay with you, Chair, and with Mountain View staff and with our staff liaison, we'll just focus in on the area that's impacting along our jurisdiction, and also, whatever flow we might have in and out of Mountain View, any other impacts they would have. So who has questions? Commissioner Amby.
I have 4 questions. At the J Street intersection, will you keep that right turn only pocket onto El Monte? I note that you're removing the RTO from El Camino onto Springer. Will you keep the RTO at Springer and J? My next question is, can you provide a little more insight and information about the crosswalks? I noticed in the documents that you're recommending in some of the alternatives, I think they're called RRFBs, rapid flashing beacons. We know in Los Altos that the flashing stop sign that exists currently at Springer and J is hated by all. Well, I'll just put it that way, and that's softly. So I'm wondering if you're recommending flashing crosswalks, if you've gotten any feedback from your residents on whether they like that or not. Then the final question is, will you be implementing similar design and infrastructure elements as exist on Castro Street that made that a multimodal corridor? The reason I'm asking is the rubber bollards that provide the physical separation between the vehicle traffic and the bike traffic are in a constant state of disrepair. And I'm wondering if you are considering that as a design element or something different. Those are my questions. Thank you.
I'll try to remember all the questions, but let's start with the first question. There are no plans as part of this study to make any changes in the Los Altos side of Almonte Avenue. So that's considering the slip lane coming to and from Almonte Avenue. That's to answer your first question. And then the second question about crosswalk improvements. Yes, we do plan to include either LED enhanced signs or RFBs, where we will be introducing new crosswalks, and that's mainly at Hollingsworth Drive. That will be to be determined during design, whether we go with LED enhanced sign or RFBs. We do have existing LED enhanced signs that we recently installed at Almonte and Marriage, and we are getting good feedback on that, and we are getting a lot of push citywide to convert existing crosswalks and improve them into LED enhanced or lighted crosswalk systems. And for your last question regarding Castro Street Complete Streets project, that is something that we are considering as part of this project. Like I said, buffer areas could be raised in areas where feasible, and that could mean rubber curbs or concrete curbs, or even green street elements. So those are some of the few items that we're going to take a look at during the design.
Final question. What has been your outreach plan to Los Altos residents? And has our city been involved in that outreach?
Thank you for the question. We have been reaching out to both City of Los Altos and City of Mountain View residents. As you know, part of Almonte on the west side is already Los Altos, and those are affected residents as part of this project. Initial outreach has been, the typical 750 feet from the project limits, and because of, the intent to get a wider range of community outreach and engagement, we've actually sent out notices for an online survey, which, was open to anyone who wanted to answer whether they use Almonte Avenue and do not live in Mountain View or Los Altos, or if they live in Los Altos and use Almonte Avenue, or if they don't use Almonte Avenue, but live in the city. We've sent those notices that are approximately within half a mile from the project limits, and we've sent out email blasts, sent notices to Los Altos staff, and even posted on their city website and Facebook page for outreach for this project.
Commissioner Katz. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, I had a question on expectations and objectives. On one of the slides, you talked about the expectation is that traffic speed, vehicle traffic speed and volume would be reduced through this action. If volume is not reduced, what then will be the impact in terms of traffic on El Monte as a result of doing this?
It's a good question. I believe if, the volume does not decrease, given that we only have one lane after this road diet, that would ultimately reduce your speed along El Monte. It could be, slower than your typical residential street. But I think that's going to be an impact of not reducing volume. But based on our traffic analysis that was completed by our consultant, from the original 18,000 ADT or average daily traffic along Almonte Avenue, they predicted a drop of up to 10,000 vehicles, down to 10,000 vehicles per day. So that is a big drop. And like I said, no drop in volume will I think ultimately mean a big reduction in the speed.
And then a follow-up question is, where would that 40% of current traffic be diverted to?
So looking at the area along Almonte Avenue corridor, the prediction is other traffic would be diverted to use Clark Avenue and Mountain View Avenue, and the Mountain View side, and both streets have the capacity to hold that diverted traffic.
And then my last question is, what are you looking for from the city of Los Altos and this Complete Streets Commission in terms of your moving ahead with this project?
We would like to get, your feedback and input on this, and, just to keep an open communication between both cities, as, this project is affecting not only the city of Mountain View, but also the city of Los Altos.
Thank you.
Others, question? Go ahead, Commissioner.
I want to build up on what Commissioner Krause was talking about. So the traffic diversion, I think I heard you say Clark, North Clark Avenue, is that right?
Correct.
Now we've got, on the Mountain View side, we have road bumps, humps, whatever you call them. No, they're not tables, actually, they're kind of humps, right? Yeah. And then on the Los Altos side, we have sort of trees, I guess, against, thank you. Should we consider as traffic you anticipate traffic to diverse to Clark? How confident are we of that one? And should we as Los Altos consider mitigation action on Clark?
So that is a traffic forecast, and I would suggest to wait after the implementation of this project to check how the actual traffic flow would be on those streets and even on this street along Monte Avenue.
Okay. Back to the forecasts. I think if I understood right, the study predicts a decrease in volume of the ADT to 10,000 approximately vehicles per day. Now, if that volume does not go down, so we stay at, say, whatever I think the study says here, initially we're at 20,000 vehicles in 2019. Help me understand, how would the volume being constant translate to lower speed? I thought if the volume is the same, speed goes up.
So with the road diet concept, your capacity of the road reduces. Right now you have 2 travel lanes in each direction, which can carry higher traffic volume compared to when you take it down to 1 lane. So if you have the same number of cars traveling and only have 1 lane, that will result into lower speed because you have so many cars trying to use that 1 lane.
Okay, maybe we'll take it offline. The physics don't add up in my head because it's the number of cars times speed equal to volume. So if one goes up, the other one goes down. But we can take it offline.
Let's leave that to later discussion. I see people
Yeah.
trying.
So third question, yeah. So third question, what is it that we require from Caltrans? I didn't understand the permitting or contribution of Caltrans to the project.
So El Camino Real is a state highway owned and operated by Caltrans. So any improvement that we have or plan to do along that stretch will require Caltrans review and approval. And that's part of this study and will be part of the design.
That's just the portion with El Camino. And the last question is, what design elements would you anticipate to put in place to prevent speeders down the center lane?
I knew someone would ask that.
Sorry?
I knew someone was gonna ask that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a very good question. As I kind of touched upon during the presentation, we are implementing median islands at Hollingsworth to prevent that activity. Originally, actually, we proposed to include full islands at those intersections, not just a median refuge island. But from feedback received from the community, they do not want, they don't want us to take away the ability to make turns at the intersections. So instead of doing a 2-way left turn lane all the way to all the intersections, we're proposing to, can you do what slide now, please? We're proposing stopping the 2-way left turn lane and converting that into a left turn pockets with protected median islands for refuge islands for pedestrians as they cross on both directions of El Monte.
Thank you.
If I may.
Yeah.
So I'm Ed Arango, Assistant Director in Public Works. And if I can add on to Senior Engineer Galong's response. So this is a balance between what we heard back from the community and trying to implement the road diet with the immediate neighbors' input and just the neighborhood in general. And so this would also be in combination with enforcement. So as Senior Engineer Galong mentioned that we would want to see how the corridor behaves once the improvements are implemented. And then at that point, we can start reacting to what's needed in that. One of those tools that we could use would be enforcement. So that would be through the Mountain View Police Department. That's all I wanted to add.
Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. So I want to focus a little bit on north-going traffic on El Monte and Springer on the Los Altos side. Assuming that there is a diet on El Monte, as proposed with single lanes. I'm not sure if Los Altos or Mudbury has done a study on what's the effect on northbound traffic on those two streets. I'm specifically concerned about possible backups because if the volume doesn't go down significantly, especially I don't see how traffic gets diverted from streets, that is from northbound traffic. I'm not seeing the path there. Was there any study done on that? I don't know, either the Mountain View side or our side, Lisa. If you could comment on it, that would be great.
Don't know of any at this time.
How about in the Mountain View? Do you have did you take that into account, or was there something done about understanding what effect would there be on this side?
I don't believe that was part of the traffic study in terms of looking at, potential backups at these streets. We only did traffic forecasts and, diverted traffic along other streets besides Almonte Avenue.
Yeah, so this is, I'm specifically bringing this up because there have been issues with backups on El Monte specifically after we've had the 2 stop signs installed, and I worry that it's going to exacerbate that situation. Something for us to, I don't know how. Should that be part of this study now, before we make a decision on what, or make a recommendation? At least from the Los Altos side, or something to monitor and be prepared for it, so.
Springer Road is 1 lane in that direction.
Can we make sure we're, the goal of this section is to ask specific questions. I'd like to make sure we're keeping that in mind and not venturing into the comments yet.
Anyone else here with questions? I'm not seeing any. I had volume on my list as well of vehicles. Can you tell us where you collected your volume? Is it close to the intersection of El Monte and Springer, or is it farther down by El Camino, or was it in multiple stretches of the road? And I'm asking that because I assume the volume's higher down by El Camino, where there's a whole bunch of shopping areas and people come in and out of El Monte, go into the shopping area and then exit back to El Camino.
So the most recent counts that we did were collected in January of this year, and that's to check what the current ADT is, and that showed that ADT has dropped to 14,000. And we actually did counts on, I believe, 2 locations between Springer Road and El Camino Real. But with the road diet analysis, the counts were collected at the beginning of again, Springer Road and El Camino Real, and what the data collection entailed was a license plate study where our consultant used video cameras to look at who's entering the segment and who's exiting the segment to check through traffic, to check the number of the volume of traffic that goes in and out of El Monte, to know which traffic will get diverted once we do implement the road diet concept.
And then can you just tell me very briefly your housing plan or housing elements? Is there specific plans for lots of growth near that area on El Monte and El Camino? Because I see a lot of shopping complexes now.
I cannot answer that question. I'm not fully aware.
Maybe I can add something. So the City of Mountain View, this is Ria Hitchbarrow, Transportation Manager for the City of Mountain View. Thank you for that question. So the City of Mountain View has a number of change areas in the city, and one of them is the El Camino Real specific plan area, precise plan area. So it's maybe like 1 parcel block on either side of El Camino is an area where we would want to add housing.
And my last question is, you talked about monitoring the project after it's put in, and someone gave an example of one of the tools you have is enforcement. Can you just tell us a little bit about some of your other projects and your categories of tools that you use once you put a project in, just walk us through that process. Like if you put something in, it's not working very well, what kind of tools do you use and what kind of time frame do you use to look at that, to make any changes?
Good question. I would say after implementation, we would look at, volumes again and traffic collisions along this corridor, potentially 6 to 12 months after implementation, just to give us time to, to let everyone get used to what the improvements are. We can look at other options as to other tools that we can do. One thing that comes to mind is once we do implement the changes, currently El Monte corridor is posted at 35 miles per hour. And once we do implement the changes, we can go back and do counts and do engineering traffic survey and check if El Monte qualifies for any reduction in speed limit. So we can lower it down to potentially 30 or even 25.
And just as a follow-up on that, besides analysis of volume and collision, and of course, lowering the speeds, like if it was found that the infrastructure wasn't quite right, do you just kind of make tweaks or do you make bigger adjustments if we're finding large vehicle backups?
Yeah, I guess that will depend on the feedback we would get in the analysis afterwards. If we think, minor tweaks here and there is needed and we can do that right away, we'll do that. And if we think a bigger project would need to be set aside for this, for further improvements for any changes, then that's something that we could take a look at as part of our CIP.
Thank you. I think that's the end of our, one more question from here, Commissioner Maloof.
If you could, please put the slide that shows the El Camino Real intersection with El Monte. I want to understand that left turn, 2 left turns. So if you're going west on El Camino, making 2 left turns onto El Monte. So this is now 2 lanes making turns, and then at some point in time, they're going to merge into 1 lane. Is there a slide that shows that? I want to understand how those 2 lanes are going to merge there.
Correct. So as let's pause here first. As you can see, this is existing condition along El Camino Real. We do have 2 left turn lanes coming from the westbound going southbound. And based on feedback received from the community, there was a big opposition in terms of removing 1 left turn pocket there, left turn lane there. So based on that, and based on knowing that this will require additional Caltrans review and analysis in terms of the impact of that removal, we went ahead and kept that 2 left turn lanes there. And if you can go to slide, I believe 13. So here on the left side of your screen, that's the 2nd street. As you turn from El Camino Real to El Monte Avenue, that's the 2nd side street that you will hit, El Monte and Marriage. And that will be where we will have a lane drop from 2 lanes to 1 as you transition into the road diet.
Got it. Thank you.
So let me just ask a question, looking at that slide. If someone's coming out of I assume that driveway is into the parking lot of the shopping center that's on the corner of El Monte and El Camino. If someone is coming out of that driveway and turning left, where the lane is now being reduced, do they turn left into the center lane?
Correct.
And then they merge, and then they'll be merging in at the same time that people will also be merging in who are being reduced from 2 lanes to 1 lane.
Correct.
Hey.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
That's the end of our question. Good question.
Thank you. Just one very quick follow-up on the traffic speed thing. How long will it take to do a traffic speed study once the improvements are made to potentially reduce the posted speed limit?
As like I said, we could check that 6 months after implementation. after construction and complete construction of the project, just so we can give some time for the community to see the impact of the improvements.
Okay. Thank you. We will now move to public comment for item 4.1, the El Monte Avenue corridor study. We will begin with members of the public in the room in Mountain View. You have 3 minutes. You are welcome to take less time if you would like. We will take you in whatever order you line up.
I lined up first. I have about an hour to say, but I'll keep it short. The first thing, some discussion here, the backups are always happening at the stop signs. And this will still have the same number of stop signs and lanes at the El Monte Springer Y. So that really won't affect the through traffic. Having the left turn lane in the middle means that there's no left turn cars sitting waiting for an opening and blocking any of the through traffic. So that won't affect that. And the ones coming out of the shopping center there, they will come out at a very slow speed compared to the other traffic, and they will only merge in when they have a chance. So, and the general gist of reducing that traffic down to 1 lane right now, as people come around that corner off of El Camino onto El Monte in the 2 lanes, they're switching back and forth both lanes because they haven't lined up with the lane that they really want to eventually be in. So this is actually going to be better because they'll just wait and then choose at Springer El Monte which one that they're going to take. And like someone else said, post a sign, El Monte that way, Springer that way will help a lot in people not trying to last moment cross over. Okay, the left turn islands or median at Hollingsworth. I live on Hollingsworth in Los Altos. One of the biggest problems I have right now is you have to wait until traffic in both directions is clear. If you put those islands, the median there, I will still have to wait till there's traffic openings in both directions before I can even enter the intersection. And that's going to be a real problem. And there's both ways there. That would cause a lot of slowing just in general. There should not be anything there. It really should be the same through. And then I suggest putting radar speed signs showing what speed you're going to just remind people you're going too fast. The other one there at that at Hollingsworth is I don't think there needs to be 2 crossings across crosswalks across El Monte at Hollingsworth. 1 is enough. The same on Merritt Avenue right now that's there works really well. Everyone just goes to that, no problem. So I don't think that's a problem. And then let's see. I will state. Darwin has done a lot of taking my input on this, and I really appreciate that. And I'll say one thing to Los Altos, the traffic calming on North Clark in Los Altos does not work. My wife and I have taken our 2.5-year-old daughter
5 seconds
there, and it's really pushes us when people park behind those, pushes us into the street, and it's dangerous.
Sir, if you don't mind, just stay, it's up to you. You don't have to. Stating your name for the
Oh, sure.
record.
My name is Terry Bush.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, hi, my name's Jerry Maloney, and I live on Hollingsworth Drive in Los Altos. And I just want to say, first off, Darwin and the city of Mountain View, they've done a great job of keeping the residents of Los Altos informed all along on this project. So I appreciate that. And I've lived on this Hollingsworth Drive, and I've biked and driven on El Monte for almost 30 years. And so I think this alternate 3 road diet plan is an excellent plan. And I think it'll slow down traffic. And I'm more than happy that if the traffic volume doesn't slow down, I'm more than happy that the traffic will slow down and maybe there'll be a traffic backup, but I'm okay with that because I think the priority is to improve bicycle and pedestrian safety. The ton of people on the Mountain View side of Hollingsworth, they go to Almond School, they're crossing that El Monte every day. and, bikers are using that. And I think lastly, I just want to say that, yeah, so I really support the road diet plan. I want to thank everyone that's worked on the project, and I hope it can be built as soon as possible. Thank you.
Before I start, can you bring up your maps?
Okay, you guys are control. I can't, give me a second.
I'm Matt Stang. I live on Hollingsworth, and I fully support Darwin's fan. I even find that even those mediums might be annoying, but I would live with it because I think the overall is planned. I am not agreeing with the Los Altos members in there about the volume. I think the volume will stay the same. Consider what happened when they add the stop sign at Almond and El Monte. And that's so much improved the backups going on to, before you couldn't get across there, and I couldn't get on to El Monte. To Almonte to Springer, that connection. So the fact of this calming, right now, our backups are at right now, the traffic backs up at Springer. With this calming, I don't think we'll see the backup. The throughput will improve because the cars won't go down there. Right now, the cars are like a speedway because they can drive so fast. This will slow down. The capacity will stay the same because they still all right now have to single file down to Springer. And that road down there is all 2-lane. So just think, it's just going to calm it down. The only place that will be congested will be that bit of merge. And that's only based on peak times, the 8 to 9 in the morning and 5 to 6 in the evenings. Most times this will be, you won't even know it. So I think that you guys are overestimating the capacity impact. I don't think you'll see any capacity impact. Because all this is really going to do is slow down people because they're speeding down there and hurrying up to a stop sign and waiting. That's what's happening right now. And what will happen with this future plan is they'll just go down the road, they'll slow down, and they will only have to wait 1 or 2 cars at the Springer stop sign. And for me, who lives on Hollingsworth and on a U-shaped street, which I have to go out the street, this is a big impact for us. Okay. This is going to be such an improvement.
Yes.
So people were concerned about capacity. I don't think there's a capacity problem. There's not a capacity problem. Clark, I don't think Clark's going to be impacted. Okay, this is a good thing. So as long as you make durable curbs so that the people don't have to worry about losing their curbs or whatever they're worried about. But I think this is such a great plan. I wish you were doing it tomorrow. I wish it wouldn't take another 2 years.
Hi, my name is Tim Coogan. I live in the 1600 block of Todd, which is just east of Springer there. And I too appreciate all the work that's been done and fully support the plan. 99% of the plan that's been proposed. To the earlier comment from Los Altos side about where the diversionary traffic would go, and you mentioned North Clark, may or may not be, but I can guarantee you a lot of it will go down Todd. We've already seen it in the last 3 or 4 years. A lot of the predictive traffic apps, as soon as there's any sort of backup at El Monte and El Camino, there's a conga line of cars that goes down Todd Street, and many of them at very high speeds. We do have the traffic humps there, but it doesn't even phase them. So I guess, I've been making comments over the last 2.5 years. I appreciate you incorporating all of that. But the comment would be just let's pay attention to unintended consequences of diverting and pushing traffic down through that Todd, Ernestine, Gilmore complex there. And I'm sure that people on Arroyo, Vista Grande, and Raimundo would have similar concerns as well. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Charles Mathis. I'm a Los Altos resident on Hollingsworth. I just wanted also to say thank you to Darwin and the team for taking community feedback into account. I'm also looking forward to alternative 3, like some of the past people said, to provide a little additional context. to people who were at the past meetings. Several of us were very opposed to the left turn restrictions. The reason being that Hollingsworth and Sparger form a closed loop. So, and I and several other neighbors, we have toddlers on Hollingsworth. So if left turns were disallowed off of Sparger, we'd have more traffic coming around our side to take a left turn. So for that, a couple of other reasons, that was the basis of our objections. So thank you very much to the team for involving the community and taking that into account.
So my name is Serge Bont. I live in Mountain View, and I live next to the, I think, intersection number 8 by Lloyd Way and El Monte. As I mentioned earlier, my son went to school in Los Altos, so he had to cross for 12 plus years El Monte. So I'm fully supportive of the plan. I don't want it to be, if I had a wish, it would be that it had been implemented 20 some years ago when my son started to go to kindergarten, but better late than never. The one thing I wanted to point out is that when you look at the Escuela El Monte intersection, my one wish would be to get rid of the parking entrance and exits from the Walgreens, because this is just horrific. It complicates the intersection greatly. You have to press a back button to continue on the sidewalk across El Camino. It's just like an aberration, and I don't know why the city allowed it, but if there is anything that can be done, that would greatly improve safety. But please approve this and let's get a bit bigger.
So we have additional public comment in the room in that view. All right, seeing none. Is there any in-person public comment in Los Altos?
No, we don't have any public
Okay.
comment.
Brandon, are there, well, if there are any virtual public commenters, click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on the phone. Brandon, do we have any virtual public comments?
Yes, we do. We have 4. I will click to allow Bruce England to talk. Please unmute yourself and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Brandon. Bruce England, Wisman Station Drive, speaking for multiple groups. Mountain View Coalition for Sustainable Planning, Green Spaces Mountain View, and the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, Mountain View, and Los Altos teams. And so we submitted a letter. I'm not going to repeat everything that's in the letter. It's pretty detailed. So I'll let that stand, but I'll say, just to summarize what the letter says, that we support, like others have said, the alternative 3 approach to this. Nonetheless, we have some areas of interest and concern about the various design details. We know that a lot of that is coming in the future still, but we wanted to capture them in the letter nonetheless. We really see this corridor as requiring reimagining, as people have said, changing it from what can be seen as a speedway to an active transportation boulevard of sorts, or a green complete street design that serves the needs for people walking and biking through there much more or much better than they're able to today. One detail that did not make it into the letter because it came along later in the day was what Serge just talked about with that Walgreens entrance there at Escuela and El Camino. If we had been able to put that in the letter, I would have put it in so that we could make that point. It really is a disastrous design situation that calls for correction. Thank you.
Celia Paymer, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, yep, again, I'm Celia Paymer, long-term resident of Mountain View, and I bike along Springer and go through that intersection of Springer and El Monte every day on my way to Los Altos. I'm really excited for option 3 or alternative 3. I sometimes go that way to get lunch, and I know many students go that way to get their Chipotle. So hopefully it's something we can use to activate biking and walking, as it's probably actually faster than driving and parking there. So one thing I will say, just sorry, as a physics teacher, it cracks me up a little bit to compare cars to an incompressible fluid or electron flow. They don't follow those laws of physics. they're going to get closer to each other as they slow down. And so as a result, they'll actually, the studies have shown they'll have more throughput potentially. It depends on the speeds and the density. But so I think that we'll have to see what happens with the throughput. I do also think it's interesting connecting to the previous questions that were asked to the safe routes to school about the stick versus the carrot. Sometimes the stick is making up space that's more palatable to bikers and walkers than it is to cars. That is the stick. We don't want them to drive and we don't necessarily want it to be pleasant. So I would like to prioritize the life and safety of children over the commute times of drivers and have that be the stick that changes people's modes of transport. If that means for the side streets, we need to put bollards so that they're only bikes throughput on Todd, maybe cars don't go that way. And that's the counterpoint is then that neighborhood doesn't have access to Almonte. So that's a big thing for discussion, but you know, cars either go both ways or they don't. I would really hope to see the speed reduced. I'm kind of curious why it hasn't been indicated for reduction already, considering it is further down in Los Altos. And I would really like to see the some form of buffered bike lanes. Maybe we can even start with the bollards. I know no one likes the bollards, but they're at least something that's cheap and easy to start with. And then hopefully we can put something more substantial and green in at some point. And finally, some proposal that could be possible for the left turn lanes from El Monte to prevent having to merge is almost everyone on the leftmost left turn lane does a U-turn. So in talks with Caltrans, if it was a U-turn only and then a left turn lane, there would only be one lane left turning. Almost everyone there is going to the shopping center. So they do a U-turn and then pull in by the Starbucks. So just that last thought. Thank you so much for your time and effort and taking all the community input. I really appreciated the chances to comment on the options.
Great. Mary Dado, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, Mary Dadio. I'm in favor of alternative 3. Please protect the bike lanes as much as possible using physical barriers and incorporate trees and plantings as much as possible. But obviously leaving some space for the cyclists to make use of the left turn lane there. I have comments about 2 intersections. The first is El Monte and Springer. So if you're southbound on El Monte, as you approach the stop sign at Springer, the right turn lane to stay on El Monte does not look like it's been tightened up very much, if at all. Cars are a speed very fast there today to get into that right turn lane. And if you're a cyclist and you're over on the right-hand side, and then you have to get out into the middle lane to go straight onto Springer, it's a scary situation. It really makes me nervous. I think in future car drivers, are going to be in one lane. And as they approach that intersection, they're going to be able to get into the right turn lane. And I expect they're going to be accelerating when they get that chance. So I'd really like to see speed mitigation at that corner for people making right turns to stay on El Monte. The second intersection is Escuela and El Camino Real, which I agree with previous speakers is just horrifying to get across as a cyclist. So if you're on Escuela or if you're at the Walgreens and you're trying to cross that intersection, or if you're a pedestrian, so pedestrian or cyclist, but especially for cyclists, El Camino is about 7 lanes wide there. And so one thing that could help would be to change the traffic light cycle there so that Escuela on one side and the Walgreens exit that's opposite that have separate green lights. Today, they're green at the same time. And it's nearly impossible for a bike to safely get all the way across the intersection and make a left turn, because by the time you start accelerating, all of a sudden if you're on Escuela, you're trying to make a left turn on El Camino, all of a sudden some car comes speeding out of the parking lot trying to go straight. And it's really scary. So I have logged a ticket to Caltrans because I understand they control this intersection. But I think support from the city I would expect could help with this. So again, if at the least make that intersection have a separate green light for the Walgreens and then a separate green light for Escuela. Plus, I prefer no turn on red for Squale and Walgreens also at that intersection. And thanks so much for making our streets safer.
All right, Chris Parry, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, Chris Perry, Mountain View resident. I wanted to speak in support of alternative 3, which looked generally good. But I had one concern, and that is in the area of the raised buffer bike lanes. I think there was some vagueness on, and I know this will be fleshed out later, but there's some vagueness on which areas would be merely striped paint. Those stretches, I believe, would be a class 3 unprotected bike lane versus which sections would get the benefit of actually being protected. I would note that the NATCO guidelines would call for having protected bike lanes on any road where the speeds are greater than 25 miles per hour or more than 6,000 vehicles per day. And so this road, even with calming and less traffic, is going to be well past the NATCO guidelines for where protected bike lanes would be appropriate. I think this is particularly important on the stretch of El Monte between Pilgrim Avenue and El Camino. That's a commercial district, and that's also on the safe route to school for Los Altos High School. So it'd be a really great idea to have protected bike lanes and not mere striped paint in that section of El Monte. And then lastly, there was a comment disparaging the rubber divider at Graham Middle School earlier, and I forgot who made the comment, but I just wanted to say I'm a parent of a Graham Middle School student, so I routinely ride and bike through that area. And from my perspective, those rubber dividers have really held up well, except for once or twice when a car hit them, but then the city was pretty good about repairing them quickly. But I would also imagine that the city of Mountain View has some hard data on the reliability for those dividers, and it would be great to share that with the public so we could look at objective measurements rather than the subjective perceptions of what drivers feel might be the case there. Thank you.
April Webster, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, April Webster speaking. I also, like others, wanted to say thank you for all the hard work on the putting together the different options. I definitely support alternative 3, using a road diet. I would also like to echo other speakers who asked that the bike lanes be protected using physical barriers. I think this is really important on the street, particularly as the speed is 35 miles per hour, which is considered by the different sources, NACTO, et cetera, to be a high speed corridor. And that's where they draw the distinction is at 35 miles per hour. On that particular topic as well, I would like to ask why the city is choosing to require a traffic study to decide to lower that to a more reasonable and safer speed, given that it's no longer required by law with the passing of AB 43 in October 2021. And then also NACTO recently put out some guidance just last month. If a street does have a speed limit of 35 miles per hour or higher, they recommend vertical dividers or either sort of medians or barriers and not flex posts or rubber barriers or the delineators nor paint. I also want to say thank you very much for considering green street elements. And I would, if it sounds like there's still some sort of flexibility, would urge to use perhaps at least medians with dirt instead of cement. That's definitely going to be, and potentially even some native drought tolerant plantings like grasses or something. That's definitely going to, it'll be cheaper than more substantial plantings, but it also opens up for more easily adding more green elements in the future, as opposed to already paving it over if you're going to go that route. And just want to point out that as well, rubber dividers and flex posts are terribly durable, and they don't really do much to address the comfort and perceived safety of streets, as well as climate resiliency. So you've seen with the drought, number of floodings along El Camino and other areas. And then I would like to just two other things. Ask that there's no right on red.
20
I
seconds.
think that's, thank you, really important. And then I'm just concerned about the choice to consider enforcement. I think design has shown that, or studies have shown that design is far more impactful, sort of funneling drivers into the behavior you want. Thank you so much.
And Spec, I'm going to click to allow you to talk. You'll please mute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, so I'm Sharon Tan. I live over on the Mountain View side of El Monte. And I just had 2 things to say. If there is going to be reduced traffic on El Monte with the road diet, I would strongly like to see the city of Mountain View evaluate what's going to happen to the side streets like Lloyd and so forth that connect over to Mountain View Avenue. And then the other thing I wanted to comment on is I believe someone from the Los Altos committee asked about future housing that might go up on the corridor, and there is a 90-unit senior facility that is going up between the church and behind CBS, and that's going to be up, I think, within 2 years. Thank you.
And Chair, that is all the folks we have in Mountain View that are online.
All right, thank you. We will now move to the committee comments for item 4.1. I think, so I believe we have a Mountain View will have a motion to make to recommend an alternative. Is that correct? Is that what you want?
Correct. That is correct.
Thank you. So what I will suggest is we start with Los Altos's hopefully succinct comments, which can, if there's anything particular regarding the sort of Mountain View Los Altos interface, I think that'd be what's best to hear. And then we will move the discussion to Mountain View so that we can make our comments and make whatever motions and the such are appropriate. Does that seem reasonable?
That seems reasonable to us.
Okay, thank you. I will hand it off to our neighboring city to make some comments.
Thank you very much. Who would like to go first? Go ahead, Commissioner Katz.
Sure. First, I'd like to thank you for sharing this with the Complete Streets Commission. This is the first time that I've actually seen the detailed plans. So looking at it this afternoon was the first time I was exposed to it. Knowing from projects that we've done to do traffic calming, we share your goals in terms of making our streets safer for bicycles and pedestrians. But we've also learned that the devil's in the details. And I think there's a lot of changes that will be made with this project. And it's impossible to understand all of the unforeseen consequences. And some of those consequences will be, if traffic is reduced as anticipated, to create other problems on streets that don't experience those today, both in your city and in ours. And we will have to address those going forward, depending upon where they are and how significant they are. So to the extent that you can keep us in the loop, and we can do this kind of sharing in the future, I think it would help both of our cities. And that's my comment.
Thank you. Who's next? Commissioner Ambio.
Again, thank you for the great work, great explanation. I am in support of road diets wherever possible. I think there's a couple of things that we need as a city to pay attention to here, which is Clark. If there is traffic diversion on Clark, that is a suggested route to school to Almond Elementary. And that is an important route to school because it dumps out right in front of the school. So if any kind of traffic diversion happens on that street, I think that's a negative impact. that we need to be aware of. So I'd urge the city of Los Altos to do a traffic study today, now, get benchmark data so that we understand what kind of changes might occur on that corridor and any kind of things that we need to do to slow traffic down. We've already had traffic speeding problems on Clark, which we tried to address with the chicanes, which was, I would say, modestly unsuccessful. I think that if we are able to reduce the speed on that corridor on El Monte, we need to make it a coordinated effort across the entire stretch. And as it goes into Springer, we know we have problems on Springer for speeding because it is a wide boulevard-like setting. So I think that we'll have opportunities for further cross-council and cross-commission communications on that. So I think those are my two big highlights for my point of view. Thank you, Commissioner Lewis.
Yeah, I want to amplify what both Commissioners Cutts and Biel said. I do believe that the volume will go down. That's 10,000 vehicles per day that will shift over. Clark is definitely a big candidate, and I think, as you said, that will be right in conflict with Almond Elementary. I also believe that some of it will divert to San Antonio too, because these are often commuters who are coming from 280 all the way to Mountain View, Google, what have you, right? And so I think we need to pay attention to those alternatives and be 2 steps ahead of those commuters in terms of what they might want to do and begin to create those mitigation elements in place. And the last bit, I do want to, again, thank Mountain View. I think to the degree that we continue to cooperate on these things, we can be 2 steps ahead of those problems and then help each other in those solutions.
Thank you. Who else has comments? Vice Chair?
Quick, I just want to, in addition to the comments that other commissioners have made, I wanted to thank the city of Mountain View for getting the residents on Hollingsworth and Sparger and their input. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to make a general comment that the implications of this will be probably felt all the way on El Monte and San Antonio up to Foothill and possibly upstream. So it's something for us to monitor and be proactive about coming back with any solutions there. And I also want to strongly support Commissioner Ambiel's request to do a traffic study quickly on Clark and understand that better and be prepared for it.
Anyone else? I can only say ditto to what all my fellow commissioners have said and just re-emphasize what our vice chair has said. Really appreciate the collaboration and hope for much more. I think I'll also say when you brought up one of those maps there, when there was where the merges were and where the turns were coming in and out of the shopping mall, and you had arrows in the middle and people were going to come out of the shopping mall and go in the middle, but actually there were arrows for cars coming the other way. So just have a closer look at the flow for not just down El Monte, but the flow in and out of the shopping area, in and out of the side streets, every turning motion, just to see all the devils in the details I heard. So check all those details. I think that's it from us. That's it from us. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we will go around our group and then the motion will be in order, but let's start with Member Phipps.
Yeah, Valerie, I can happily start. Just 1,000 million thank yous. And most of all, I really want to thank, this is, a lot of this has been a problem for a long time, but the city really investigating this was precipitated by a pedestrian fatality from Michelle Montalvo there going across from the Panera Bread. So I love that the city took very quick action to make some quick build improvements there at Merritt Way. And when BPAC said that's great, and the Mountain View and Los Altos residents said that's great, but not enough, the city took us very seriously and have then done a traffic study here. And I know it takes time. That fatality, I believe, was in 2015. Here we're 8 years later, but we, it's not forgotten. And I really, really just want to kind of just have a moment of saying, like, that's what brought us here, and hopefully this will help prevent other fatalities. And injuries. I know we did discuss in 2020 BPAC, Mountain View BPAC, the Escuela and El Camino intersection specifically, and liked the proposed improvements there, and so it did not come back here. But I will relate it to like how we've done some quick improvements. No Caltrans is involved, but I have to just echo 1000% everything I've heard here today. I regularly go to that Petco and Walgreens and the auto parts store in that area, and when I'm leaving the Walgreens, people coming south on Escuela, turning left on El Camino, they do not yield to people turning right out of Walgreens. They do not yield for people driving straight out of Walgreens, and they certainly do not yield to pedestrians. I have slammed on my horn to alert drivers turning left on Escuela, to alert the pedestrians to stop because someone is coming right at them. Pedestrians crossing from the northern side of El Camino towards the Walgreens. I see it. We have 3 cats. We go that area a lot. I see that weekly. I filed multiple reports, and then progress is coming. If anything, there was a lot of great suggestions here. Also, it is pretty ridiculous that to continue walking on a sidewalk, you have to push a call button, and there's no right turn on red in the exiting the Walgreens parking lot, so you can just turn even though people might have a crossing signal. It's similar to the Whole Foods on El Camino. But huge thank you. When this came in 2020, it wasn't sufficient. And thank you again for listening for the whole corridor. I really like how this is all connected. And I also understand that if any changes specifically El Camino outside of like what we're already doing with the repaving could delay the whole project. So I appreciate keeping the focus on what we can do as quickly as possible. I think everyone said rewind 20 years ago and do it, but I appreciate the expediency, and I'm all in favor of alternative 3. I think, there's a lot, and ditto for all the comments from the public on this and the written public comments that came in as well.
Tristan?
Yeah, I would also big thank you to everyone who worked on this project. And also I'm very appreciative of all the comments we've had from people who live in the area. Useful, I don't know, everywhere in the city. It's very, very useful to get some input. Thank you very much. I have one thing I'd like to bring up that I haven't seen mentioned, which is, so we've heard why alternative 2 wasn't favored. I think we're all good friends to that, but there was one thing in alternative 2 that I did kind of like, which is the very north where it hits El Camino. There was more protection. There was no left turn onto Edmane, sorry. As I said, I'm not familiar with the area, but there is, it's a short section with a lot of conflict, and there's a lot that you would, as a cyclist, need to be watching. And removing that left turn is just removing one more potential point of conflict. And I think that's something we can think about including. That whole northern section, because it goes out into 2 lanes, the road diet ends. There's a lot, it becomes more unsafe inherently because of that. And anything we can do to reduce the number of conflicts in that area, I'm in favor of. That would be the one change that seems like worth considering. We've heard of, in addition to everything that we've heard tonight. I also have a story of almost being head crossing by someone coming out of the Walgreens intersection. It's bad. And one more thing I would add, this is maybe pie in the sky, but the Springer Edmonte intersection, you can think about, it seems like a roundabout would work really well there. I know it would take a lot of coordination and everything, but put it in your brains. It might work a lot better than the stop sign configuration. That's all my comments.
Yes, so about traffic volumes. this may have been taken into account already, but for through traffic, it might fall. So about 10 years ago, Google Maps would regularly recommend that I reach 280 North via El Monte, going from Old Mountain View. And now it very rarely does so. And I assume it's because of the slower speeds on the Los Altos section of El Monte. So it could be that quite a few cars who just will disappear without diverting to Clark or other places they would go to. I mean, this is really a roundabout way, but what can you do going 85, like south on 85, only to go north on 280. Marich Way, if in any way possible, it would be nice to figure out what bikes who are arriving on Marich Way do when they get to El Monte. This was 10 years ago as well, I would bike several times a week on Marich in order to get to the Page Mill Business District. So going via Marich, then eventually Portola, then eventually Bull Bike Path. And there will be improvements on El Camino, but we just heard how everyone dislikes the Walgreens driveway, and I do too. I don't know that we can discount Marich as continuing to be an important bike route, especially since it connects Mountain View to Los Altos Sweet Shop. So and it really is the low stress kind of green street, that side of El Camino. And it's just once you're on El Monte, you either are taking like the sidewalk the wrong way, or if you want to go to the shopping center with Chipotle, etc., right? Like then you have to become a pedestrian and use the crosswalk. And I don't know what the solution is, but it would just be nice to resolve that. Thanks.
All right. Okay, no good order. So taking order, they were I really don't like how the right turns are set up at El Monte and El Camino in the current plan. I realize that's consistent with the streetscape plan, but it has basically the right turn lane crossing the bike lane right now. And I hope that, and if I had to pick like one thing out of we're trying to do more protected intersection things at that intersection, it would be make it so that the bikes going eastbound on El Camino and northbound on El Monte have that like protected bulb out island there, so that they can basically just stay on the right side of the road and aren't crossing or being crossed by the right turning cars. That would probably have to be paired with no right turn on red to make sense. I assume this is all stuff that would have to go through Caltrans, so that's what I'm thinking there. I guess as a side comment on the 2 left turn lanes off of El Camino onto El Monte, I don't have a strong, I would, given that messing with that would delay the current project and whatnot, I'm not going to push on that here, but it is something that I'd like us to keep in mind, the fact that basically having those 2 left turn lanes means we have to have 2 lanes on El Monte there. That means that's an extra 11, 12 feet that a pedestrian has to walk to cross El Camino. So if in the future we get to a point where it makes sense to reduce that would be great, but yeah. I liked Vice Chair Stone's suggestion about borrowing the removal of the left turn onto Edna Murray. I think Sylvia Paymer mentioned the concept of modal filters as something that we might add if we see excessive traffic diversion onto side streets. I think that's something we should keep in our toolkit. Probably not worth worrying about until and unless that becomes an issue, but I think that's a good thought. I definitely want us to be protecting our bike lanes as much as reasonable. My main concern with our bike lanes is that is more so people parking in them, even like we're treating them as loading zones, rather than a concern about cars wandering into the bike lane. Because I'm hoping that these improvements will make it so that the traffic is slow enough that you don't need massive concrete barriers. And so the bigger issue will be a delivery driver stopping in the bike lane and using that as their drop off point for an Uber driver waiting there for someone to come out of their house or stuff like that. And that's something which is addressed by even simple plastic things. I also share the concern that multiple people have raised about the Escuela crossing. And lastly, I would love, as I was starting to get at in one of my questions earlier, I would love to see something to tighten up the turn radii at the various side streets, like Merritt and such. I'm looking at them right now. I'm concerned that like, for instance, southbound traffic turning onto Merritt will drive very fast across the front of the bike lane. And I'm assuming that realigning the curbs is not really within scope for this project. So, but we have done things like at the intersection of Central Avenue and Moffett Boulevard, we put in some number of years ago, some of those plastic armadillo curbs or whatever to tighten up a turn. I'm not sure why those have now been there for a whole bunch of years rather than something more permanent, but they work. So if we were to, it'd be great to do something similar at some of these side streets to make it so that people are slowing down more to take the turn and then not speeding across the bike lane as much and not speeding across the crosswalk as much either. Yeah. And let's definitely make sure we do a speed reduction study. I would have thought that AB 43, as April Webster was alluding to, would let us preemptively reduce the speed limit in some way. I'm not going to pretend I have a perfect grasp of all the complexities of that, since I know it only applies in certain circumstances and it's weird carve outs, but it might be worth another check to make sure that we aren't missing some provision of that lets us do more preemptively. Okay. Is there any other discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
Chair.
Yes.
Chair, if I may, I forgot to do one of my duties. So I just want to clarify for our members of this commission and for the members of the public joining. So my understanding is that while some of this stretch along here is Los Altos, that the border between Mountain View and Los Altos goes right up to the curb on the Los Altos side. So technically Mountain View has the full jurisdiction of the roadway all the way up to Springer. Is that a correct understanding?
That is correct.
So thus, for the members of the public and for our commission, that's the reason why we're not voting on this. And I wanted to bring that up before, but forgot to, and was reminded to.
That is a very useful clarification. And you reminded me about one other comment that I can take more time with. I would love to see some improvement at the sort of whole, the El Monte Springer J Street mess at some point. I'm not a fan of those slip lanes. I do actually use them on my bike to go faster, but I don't think that's the use case that should be prioritized. But that's something that would require coordination with between the two cities. So I hope that's something that can happen sometime. I don't think that makes sense as part of this project today, but if an opportunity does arise, or maybe it does make sense, then that'd be great.
Sure, if it's, I had a kind of a that's all triggered some thoughts in me.
Yeah.
I with member Vice Chair's comment on, I think this is out of the city scope, but looking at where we have like this little maze of El Monte, Springer, and I think there's another street that comes in there, and a roundabout is something I recently visited the Midwest, and roundabouts are appearing everywhere, even within towns. Otherwise they would have thought it was impossible. And if there is space, they are much more efficient than four-way stops. And I think that is something to consider, as that is right at our border. I would like to ask a clarifying question, if it's okay, about Vice Chair's recommendation on like this alternative two's treatment of Edna Mary Way. Would that gel at all with what we have for alternative 3, or are they just two disparate treatments?
That is a good question. That is an option that we can look at, but I also want to remind that part of the survey results was of great opposition to Science Street restriction. Okay. That is why that was not part of alternative 3.
Got it, got it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Do I have a comment to that?
I'm afraid not, sorry.
Sorry. So thank you for that clarification. So, yeah, so that was my only kind of, I thought those ideas from Vice Chair Stone were very interesting.
Yeah, I guess my comment would be, I was interpreting the concerns about left turn lanes as being mostly the other side streets, and that's there's an incrementalism of even if there are concerns about left turns on this side street, there can also be left turns on the other side street still. And I know that one of the public commenters was mentioning a particular combination of streets that was not this one. So I'm sure there are people who would be inconvenienced by that, but yeah.
So given that, I'm prepared to move to recommend alternative 3 with the considerations of the comments made by both committees today, where as we move into further design phases.
Can we make, sorry, someone just said me.
Or any questions?
Could we get a little bit more clarity on what you mean by
Other comments?
Yeah, I can be a little more clear. Specifically, I think, so the motion, my motion specifically is not looking at El Camino and Escuela, because I realized that was already very deeply discussed in 2020. So what's been presented here as alternative 3, I would like to make that recommendation for alternative 3 with the additional recommendations for where we can to use the, correct me on this phrasing, but the raised bike lanes, where we can bring in green elements, where we can, and if possible, reduce speed before the work, to take those considerations in. That's my motion.
Could I friendly amend to consider a way for bikes to go left or straight coming out of Marriage?
I accept that amendment. I think that is, to look at. So everything I just said, plus check on the bike flow from Marriage onto El Monte, that there's a reasonable, if possible, a more reasonable approach without having to discount.
Are you seconding?
Yeah, oh yeah, sure. I'll
Okay,
second.
okay, just to clarify, you mentioned raised bike lanes. There's a distinction in the what elements we put in the buffers, and there's what would be done with the bike lanes themselves. And I think at least one of the public comment letters mentioned raising the bike lanes to the sidewalk level. I don't believe that's been mentioned in this meeting thus far. I also don't know what implications that would have in terms of project complexity.
So I thought I had heard that additionally during public comments, specifically Bruce England had mentioned that as well, but it was in his letter as well. So if I'm mishmashing it, so I can maybe restate that to make a motion to move forward with. I should have written this down.
you want me to say what I've got here?
Yes, thank you.
Recommend moving forward with alternative 3 for El Monte with the additional recommendations for, and this part I'm not sure about, are we saying a raised element for protected bikeway, or we're saying a raised bikeway?
That's what I was trying to
A
confirm.
raised element for protected bikeway.
Okay. Incorporating green elements, reducing speed before the work, which I wasn't quite sure what that means, and consideration of bike access from Marriage to southbound El Monte.
And I to clarify on the reducing speed, I heard a lot in public and committee comments saying, could we just reduce the speed as part of this work, as opposed to do the work?
Reducing speed limits, posted speed limits. Okay.
Yeah, reducing posted speed limits basically simultaneously. with-
Sooner rather than
Posted speed
later.
limits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. We hope this will reduce the speed, but yes, posted speed limits.
And just to confirm as a clarification, I've been assuming that raising the bike lanes themselves would be a substantial complexity increase to the project. Is that correct?
Correct. The scope of the project is really bike lanes or protected bike lanes, if possible.
Okay, thank you. I
So in-
wanted to ask before I assumed.
So in this motion, this is, I think Rhea caught that. It's consider where feasible, like it may not be feasible.
Right.
It may be certain intersections or areas make more sense to pursue that and others don't.
Can I propose amending this to ask for consideration of removing the left turn from El Monte onto Edna Mary?
I'm happy with that amendment.
You're the one that seconded.
But would you be happy with that second to also consider removing left turn from Edna Mary or?
I'm lost at this point. I'm sure.
Can someone share the math, please?
Edna Mary is the one that has the Office Depot on it. Yes, it's not the one with the U shape that we heard from all of the commentators. Yes, this is just to reduce the number.
So I think maybe from simplification standpoint, my motion will not include the Edna Mary and that.
We put in this place.
We can make that a second. That
I
could be a
think
separate motion.
Yeah, so my motion
Okay.
then will stand as real last.
Yeah, and sorry, Ria, just for El Monte. I thought you said south, but I mean going towards El Camino.
Oh, northbound, sorry.
So that's correct, Now I think what they're talking about is that left turn going into Edna Mary.
Yeah, so an alternative.
Oh, yeah,
to
so
that.
no, I think that she was talking about the last part of the motion that's on the table at the moment. From marriage to.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I'm not amending with Edna Mary.
That'll be a second motion.
That could be,
It
that
could
could
be,
be
it
a
could be.
second motion, yes, keep it simple. So
Yeah.
I move as per what Rhea had captured for my recommendation. You still second?
Yes, second.
James, would you like to call the vote? Chair?
Yes. All in favor?
I,
It is unanimous. Member Barton is absent because he recused himself.
May I make the motion? Yes, I would like to make a motion to consider the adapting the turning restriction onto Edna Mary from alternative two to be looked at to see if it is feasible and if the see if it's feasible. End of motion.
I will second that motion.
We have another motion.
Can there be comment on that?
Then no, that's part of the public comment or earlier public comment. Rhea, is that a clear enough motion?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Anything from the committee on that?
Probably a good idea, but I don't know enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. How we take a vote? Let us take a vote on that. All in favor of the motion to examine the feasibility of to suggest that we try to, sorry, can you restate your motion, please?
To see if it's feasible to adapt the design element from alternative two, which was the restriction of a left turn onto Edna Mary Road.
Yes. All in favor of that motion? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain?
Yes.
Okay. That motion passed with
May I have a clarifying
Please.
question?
Yes.
So as part of the alternatives that was proposed, which
Yes.
means it is feasible.
Yeah.
So are you
We want an actual recommendation that we
recommending it as to
rather than
be
just-
part of alternative three?
As long as you feel that it fits in with the rest of alternative.
So do we need to kind of amend the motion that you just voted on? So it would be to amend alternative 3 to add that
Removal.
left turn restriction.
I thought that's what the motion we just made, if it was
I
feasible.
think
Okay,
you
so
said
if
that.
it's, okay, so, okay.
Right. For my own notes,
Los Altos laughing at us.
I don't know.
Laughing with you.
Okay. Was there anything that would be useful to explicitly tally with regards to the anything else? All right. Unless anyone has anything else, I believe this brings us to the end of item 4.1, the El Monte Corridor Avenue Study. If I said those words in the right order. This brings us to, so in our agenda, this brings us to item 5, committee staff announcements, updates, requests, and committee reports. Can you pass this to Darwin? And so I do not know, and first we have item 5.1 staff comments. I do not believe we have anything from Mountain View this week. We do?
As a request from the city of Los Altos that we would talk about the bike month activities.
All right. Please take it away.
All right. All right. So this is just a preview, what we have planned for the month of May, Bike Month. On May 9th, the mayor's proclamation will occur establishing Bike Month in the city of Mountain View. On May 13th, we will have a crowdsourced active transportation plan bike ride. So anyone here at this group or listening, please feel free to provide us locations that you see needing improvement in the city of Mountain View. And then I will do my best to link all those locations together and we will have a bike ride. It'll be on May the 13th, 10 a.m. Specifically that date because our lead consultant on the active transportation plan will be here and she will ride with us and we will show her all the various locations that are important to residents of Mountain View. Then on May 18th, 19th, and 20th, we have Bike to Wherever Days, which is an effort from the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition and the city of Mountain View. We'll have 3 city energizer stations, one at the Civic Center Plaza on the 18th, which is Thursday, at one on the transit station, the 19th, which is a Friday, and then on Saturday for a shorter time, Stevens Creek Trail head at Evelyn. We are looking for volunteers to help man these energizer stations. There's just a table where you encourage people to bike more, let them know about what's going on in the city of Mountain View. I think we'll have some bananas and oranges and water, like that kind of thing. So please, if you do want to sign up for an energizer station, contact me and I can put you in contact with Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, who is organizing signups. And then lastly, we have 2 non-city energizer stations, which is great. One will be at Grant Sleeper area and the other will be at the La Avenida trailhead north on Stevens Creek Trail. And that is all I have for Bike Month. And if the city of Los Altos would like to speak or present, that is all I have.
And just as clarification for anyone who is used to Mountain View meetings, we have a special meeting tomorrow where we will have a more complete normal staff update. But we are keeping this meeting as concise as we can.
Just relevant to things that are both relevant to Los Altos.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the Bike Month update for the city of Los Altos. We put together the planning committee, which started to meet in January, which I referenced in the previous presentation that I gave. And these are the list of involved parties that helped. They've been planning Bike Month activities for the last few months. There was a proclamation yesterday at our city council meeting declaring that May is Bike Month. We're having Bike to School Day on May 3rd. We're having a Family Bike Day on May 13th, which is a group ride that people can sign up for. We're having Bike to Wherever Days and Bike to Work Days on the 18th through 20th, the same calendar as everybody else, and energizer stations at those. And then the Safe Routes to Downtown Foundation Association is putting on the Downtown Bike and Dine event, which we are helping them with. We did the bike light giveaways that I talked about earlier. We're also doing bike rodeos in elementary schools. The Recycle Bike Drive on April 8th happened at Los Altos High. And so that was Greentown volunteering to fix bikes on the day of. And give bikes to students and others in need. And the Los Altos Police Department is also doing a bike rodeo on April 29th this weekend, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Bike light giveaway events, we already had 3. I talked about this earlier. We've distributed about 550 lights. Bike to the Moon is a contest at schools with the mileage that I talked about earlier. And then these school-based events down here at the bottom. Gardner, Bulis, and Egan are planning a WOW Day. Let's see, Family Bike Day is on May 13th. It's starting at the Bicycle Outfitter on the south side of town, and also at the community center on the north side of town. And it'll be a guided bike ride with Energizer stations. And there will be some education component on how to navigate streets on your bike. And then Bike to Wherever Days. There's a pledge to ride, which I'll talk about more in a minute. And there's going to be an Energizer station hosted by the Bicycle Outfitter. Okay, this is where things get serious. This is the Bike to Wherever Days pledge page captured at 2 different moments in time. So the first one was on April 11th. The second one was on April 25th. And as you can see, everyone can pledge. Los Altos was second place as far as pledges on the 11th. Mountain View was in 3rd place, but now tides have turned, and so we are asking you, among other things, to pledge to ride during Bike Month. This is some more information on the Bike and Dine event. It's happening on May 19th from 4 to 8 p.m. It'll be downtown at the Community Plaza. There'll be music and activities, and there will be, most importantly, some discounts from the restaurants downtown. So some promotions. Everyone will be hanging out, dining, and having a good time. So I'll send the Eventbrite link to that when I get it. And this is our final slide. How can we get the Complete Streets Commission and the BPAC involved? We are asking you all to participate in Bike Month if you're able to. So you can pledge to ride during one of the Bike to Wherever days. You can encourage students who are going to be biking to school to attend an event. You can attend one of the rides on May 13th, the Family Bike Day ride. You can volunteer at an Energizer station May 13th, 18th, or 19th. And meet other bike enthusiasts, and you can attend the Bike and Dine. Some of the city staff will be at the Bike and Dine too, if you want to come hang out with us. That is the end for now. Thank you.
Thank you. To go through our process as we do this even for the simple ones. Any clarifying questions from Mountain View end?
I have an
Members,
important question. Is State of Mind participating in the Bike and Dine?
Go and find out.
Exactly. I don't have a list of participants, so it's really a secret from everyone, including me.
Anything on the Los Altos side? Okay, I don't see any public comments in the room. You can always ask the question.
We have one comment.
Sorry, I was just gonna ask, I think we've sent out some of the links maybe to commissioners, but just send out an email with the links for pledging and volunteering, and thank you.
I have also another update on El Camino Real. I'll keep it quick. I know we're all tired. Are you ready now?
We are.
Okay. Right. Okay, so this is a brief update on the El Camino Real Caltrans street resurfacing project, which we were planning on giving to our commission last month. We had to push it to this month, and then when it was a joint meeting, we thought that everybody could benefit from this update since we are all kind of in the same position. So these are the 3 brief things that we'll talk about tonight: project overview, design details, and then some next steps. So as far as a little bit of background on this project, I think a major question that a lot of people are having is just, why is this happening? And Caltrans has finished the design phase for the resurfacing project on El Camino Real. So it started out as a resurfacing project. And then Caltrans secured a grant to install bike lanes if each community wanted bike lanes. And they worked with each city to figure out everyone's preferences. And one of the requirements was that we had to have policy approval from city council. So both Los Altos and Mountain View elected to install class 4 protected bikeways, if I'm not mistaken. And Palo Alto is the other jurisdiction within the project limits. And they are keeping their existing condition until they complete their bicycle plan. So their portion is kind of under review right now. I have some small notes there on the side that pertain just to Los Altos, but the commission reviewed the project and then recommended class 4 bikeways to council, and then council approved it in March 22. So probably a similar process happened for Mountain View. And why is this important? So this resurfacing project is a once in a 25 to 30 year opportunity to kind of revision the striping. When you resurface a street, you obviously have a clean slate, and so it's easy to install striping improvements that are different than what's out there now. So this is a vision for the future of the community, and it's an important regional update and for the corridor of El Camino. It's an important component of the regional transportation network. Obviously, it connects so many places. And this is an opportunity for these 3 communities to be leaders in the regional transportation implementation. So obviously there were a lot of trade-offs involved in this project. We lost a lot of parking spaces. I know it was 248 in Los Altos, probably similar, even more in Mountain View, and that's a big change. And on the pros side, this is a high value transportation corridor, and this was an opportunity for really innovative changes to the transportation network that would have a lasting impact. So basically the project summary is addition of protected bikeways on El Camino, keeping the current number of travel lanes, which is 3 in each direction, and then removal of the parking to accommodate this change. Originally, we had thought that Caltrans would install just buffered bike lanes, striping only, and that the city would select and furnish and install the vertical elements to create a class 4, which was recommended by CSC and approved by council. This image on the right is a different city, but this is what it would look like. This comes from the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition Bikeway Design Manual, and up in the top corner, this is what the delineator looks like. So we found out that Caltrans is actually planning on installing the delineators themselves. So that is good news. The pro of that is that there's no delay between the installation of the bike lanes and the installation of the protective vertical element. Both cities can consider adding additional elements or replacing the vertical elements in the future if they want to, if they don't, want to go with something else. And the city will be responsible for maintaining that vertical element through a maintenance agreement with Caltrans. And this is an image on the right of the booklet that was published. It's the Class 4 separated bikeways approval for use in California, published by the Bicycle Coalition. And you can see there, that's an example of a buffer that has a vertical element, the channelizers. And then they've also added a low profile curb, which was something that we were at least thinking of doing in Los Altos. That's a 2-way facility, and all of our facilities will be 1-way on each side of the street, however. This is a capture from our Complete Streets Master Plan showing the different tiers of bicycle improvements, and what we'll be installing is the most robust, the Class 4 separated. This is important because it aligns with local and regional plans and goals. So our Complete Streets Master Plan, the VTA, bicycle superhighway, various alternatives. Also, I noticed Mountain View has the El Camino Real Streetscape Plan, and then the VTA regional planning. All right, and then I was chatting with some commissioners and they said, we looked at the plans are a little hard to interpret. Can you interpret the plans for us when you do this update? And so I just kind of wanted to, instead of putting the plans up there, just put some images. So on the left, we have the existing condition of El Camino, and on the right is that same image. This is from a different city. I forget what city it is, but this is roughly what it'll look like. This will be a travel lane. It looks like in this image, it's parking, and we won't have that. So we'll just have the bike lane, we'll have the buffer with the vertical element, and then we'll have our 3 travel lanes here. So that's one major design element of plans is the buffered bikeways. And then another major design element is crosswalk improvements. This is the existing condition on El Camino now, just these basic crosswalks. And this is an image from another city of what it will look like in the future. It'll be upgraded to the ladder crosswalk, and they'll be adding the stop bars. And then green skip box conflict markings. These will be applied at driveways, at transit stops, and through intersections. So this is El Camino now. Here's the driveway curb cut. And this is an image, I think, from Santa Cruz of what it will be more like in the future. So the green skip boxes will front all the driveway openings and transit stops, and they'll go even through the intersections. So those are the three major elements. I took a look at the plans recently, and this is a snapshot that I have from the plans. My concern was that there are some areas where the buffer is broken for a really long distance, and the skip boxes are really expansive, and that's not ideal because there is no protection for bikes during that long distance. It looks like here we have a transit stop. So these were the requests that I made to Caltrans, and then I'll tell you what the responses were. Some good and some to be worked on. But so one request was just to reduce overall the long expanses of green skip boxes. So some of these are the request of VTA. They're for bus stops. VTA required expanses ranging from 170 to 500 feet because they wanted, I believe it was 2 buses to queue at once, but it could have been more than that in some places.
Articulated buses.
Articulated buses. Thank you. So my next request was, can you reduce the length of conflict zones at driveways and avoid grouping multiple driveways together? It looked like they had done that if there were a couple driveways in succession. Put the buffer in between was my request, and they said that they would look into that. And another request was to use a modified buffer if there wasn't enough space for a full 2 or 3 foot buffer, which was what they were aiming for. Could they instead do 2 6-inch stripes with a 6-inch gap in between and continue the vertical element through? They said that this is not in line with their standards. I do see that treatment a lot in San Francisco, and it's really great. I also asked if they could extend the buffer all the way to the intersection instead of dropping it in advance of the intersection. So here's an example also from San Francisco, a bikeway that I bike often. And as you can see, the buffer with the vertical element in it goes all the way to the stop bar. What Caltrans has done in their plans is they have broken it in advance of every intersection that gives cars the opportunity to merge into the bike lane to make the turn. They said that that is also not in line with their standards. So I know this sounds like bad news, but there are some next steps. Los Altos and Mountain View.
Wait, another 25 years.
Yeah. The 2 cities have talked about how we can coordinate on this project, and we have talked about how we can coordinate in talking to Caltrans to see if there's any room for any possible movement on any of these. I know it sounded like RIA had already reached out to them, and so that's something that we will coordinate our efforts on and hopefully involve maybe VTA as well in the discussion. I personally reached out to NACDO for some design guidance here. They've responded, and we need to have a little bit more of a conversation. Both cities are aligned in wanting the safest and best infrastructure for bikes and pedestrians, so that's a pro. And even without these requested modifications, after talking to Mountain View, we kind of, RIA imparted some wisdom and knowledge onto me and said that this project is still valuable because it preserves and dedicates space for the bikeways. And we can go through the encroachment permit process in the future and make design modifications in the future. So we could do protected intersections or maybe get some, luck with those design exceptions to implement something that's not their standard. That's the end. Any questions or comments are welcome.
Thank you both, you and Ria. Thank you.
This was a fantastic presentation. And not only that, the work that you and Ria are taking on these next steps to drive it forward with Caltrans, contact NACDO, all this is fantastic. And I think we reviewed at the VTA BPAC at our last meeting, the central bikeway plans, which include a huge stretch of El Camino Real and Santa Clara. And the VTA is the lead agency for that. And they had very elaborate plans. And member Adamic from Mountain View brought up the challenges we that Mountain View was having, and I said, ditto. And so the VT is aware of that, and we said help. So I would encourage you to try to use the VTA as well as the Regional Transportation Agency to help our two cities advance, because otherwise that problem is just going down the line. Yeah.
Can we get a copy of this presentation?
Sure.
Thank you.
This is you.
What is the time of the clock?
For construction. Last time I talked to them, you know, they were originally supposed to do construction in the summer. Last time I talked to them, it was the fall. I know there's a sewer project that they're trying to coordinate. So it sounds like it's a little bit variable.
24.
No, they're still aiming for this summer and this fall. Yeah. That's what I heard.
We're being told also that the project will start in the Mountain View side, not the Palo Alto side.
Okay, thank you. I think we're done with this item, so I'll pass it back to the Mountain View Chair to see if you have anything here.
Okay, just to make sure we're doing things in order, are there any public comments on this this staff comments item? Nope, great. Anything from Mountain View side? Just okay. We will move on to item 5.2 committee comments. Are there any unagendized committee comments to be made?
We are going to take the opportunity to pass on that this evening.
Great. I'm going to encourage Mountain View to pass on that as well, since we have a meeting tomorrow. Okay, then we will move in our agenda to item 6, set date and time for the next Mountain View BPAC meeting, which will be the special meeting tomorrow, Thursday, April 27th at 6:30. And that will be in a similar format to this meeting, where we will be in person, and we should also have a Zoom link for members of the public to be able to call in.
But we will be in the atrium downstairs.
We will be in a different conference room. And then for item 7, our next 2 meetings will be on June 28th, then August 30th, then September 27th. And just to make sure I'm not missing something, when I adjourn, am I adjourning both of our groups?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Great, then we are adjourned and everyone can go home.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, that was